Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 244. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, where's Connor?
Thankfully, not here.
First non-been to Superman, and he had to work.
This is the first time we've read an issue of Superman in like 2 years. Maybe more than that.
Yeah, because he was forced to read action.
That's true.
But he hadn't done Superman, so yeah. Oh boy.
But yeah, it's a DC Comics podcast. We talk about DC Comics every week. We get together, we've read our books, and we'll talk about them. I mean, obviously, we're in the first month of Infinite Frontier, so there's a lot of kind of firsts, or even if it's not a new run, a lot of kind of like, okay, new starting points, new kind of jumping off points for some of these books. Coming up on this week's show, we do have some news, of course, but the books we'll be talking about is Superman 29, the start of the proper start of the Philip Kennedy Johnson run on Superman. We have Wonder Woman 770, the start of Becky Cloonan, Michael Conrad's run. We have the Joker issue 1, the start of the new James Tynion book, which is actually a Jim Gordon book, but more on that later. We also have Batman Urban Legends issue 1, the new anthology Gotham book, telling a variety of stories from different Bat-related characters. And some that aren't really that Bat-related, they just happen to be in Gotham, but more on that. And then Rorschach issue 6 to round out the week. So that's what's coming up on today's show. Hopefully you'll have fun.
Yeah.
More fun than Connor, who's not here.
Yeah, well, at least he's getting a paycheck. He'll be here. At least he's getting paid.
And I'll be getting paid with time without Connor. Which is...
you could look at it that way.
Some would say it's the sweetest pay of all.
No, we'll have to have a day since CR21 outbreak. We're at 1 now.
He's away getting a transplant because he wants to be Connor again. He's not happy with Conroe, so he's away getting a transplant to become Connor once more. Yeah.
He's getting an R put in or transposed.
They need to put it through his heart though. They're having trouble finding it, so if they ever do, they'll accomplish it. He'll be back next week.
Oh boy.
I mean, were you expecting anything less than just like, a few solid minutes of making fun of Connor at the start of this episode?
Yeah, but I didn't expect the soulless, yes, heartless.
Well,
he's not a machine.
I can't make fun of his liver. That's already gone.
It's true. That's always one of my favorite Simpsons bits is where an ambulance is transporting a liver and it crashes and it flies across, and Barney Gumble, the town drunk, looks down. He goes, "Oh, not so fast." And he grabs it and puts it back under his shirt. I think of Connor now.
As should everyone. So yeah. Now I was actually shocked that we did not have solicits to talk about this week. Partly because they've typically been ready for our second episode in the month for a while until last month. Last month was the first time we had to wait till the third week. But more specifically because there was a lot of news on the run up to Friday, and normally what they do is they'll reveal some of the new stuff and individual news stories, and then the solicits will hit on the Friday. So I was very surprised to see that nothing dropped yesterday, because there actually was quite a bit of news this week for June's solicits. So next week we'll definitely have solicits then, and we'll go through them in depth and any other new stuff to make. But it makes me wonder though, is there bigger stuff to announce next week? This is what we're getting, all the sort of the lower key stuff this week. I don't know.
Yeah, there's some pretty big stuff this week, so I can't imagine a topping. But who knows with DC anymore? They're constantly pulling stuff, Yeah. No one was expecting.
Yeah, that Lobdell Connor Kent book, I'm sure, will be announced next week.
You don't say that. That already happened.
Yeah, but that was like a false start. This is going to be a proper run. Like he's read to it, it's going to be 100 issues.
Yeah, you don't say that.
It's going to be called Superhood and the Outlaws.
That joke wasn't funny this week. I just want you to know. I know what you were trying. I did not fall for it. I did not vote.
Matt is referring to my Twitter poll during the week. I was just asking what people thought of Connor Kent. For the record, the answer who won by 57%, beating out What was the other option? There was another Joker option. I can't remember what the other one was.
Red. You said, is he the Red
Is
Hood?
that Red Hood? Yes. That got like 43%. So
Yeah.
you know, at Will89 on Twitter if you want more exciting polls and surveys from time to time.
Oh boy.
All right, so kicking off with the news, someone who doesn't have a book but is getting an 80-page, 100-page 80-year anniversary super spectacular, which is not, I mean, technically the Joker didn't have a book when he got his either, so I suppose it's not that unusual, but he is a villain, whereas Green Arrow, on the other hand, we typically would expect to have a book, but he hasn't had one since 2019. So maybe this will be a teasing, a future thing, because I think one of the things that stuck out about a lot of those other anthology specials is that usually one of the stories was there to set up where things were going with the character. Maybe there just won't be that in this case, but in June we're getting a 100-page Green Arrow super spectacular for his 80th anniversary, with a host of creators, as you'd imagine. I'll read out here what they've said. The oversized anniversary issue follows in the footsteps, combining an all-star lineup of Green Arrow storytelling legends such as Mike Grell, who you'd expect, Jeff Lemire, Phil Hester, Otto Schmidt, Ben Percy, Tom Taylor, Devin Grayson, alongside new Green Arrow contributors Stephanie Phillips, Mariko Tamaki, Ram V, Vita Leia, Nicholas Scott, Chris Mitten, Laura Braga, Max Famura, and Brandon Thomas, as well as some others. Obviously, they mixed the artists and the writers up in there. That was a hodgepodge of names all thrown together. A lot of names that we like in there, though.
Especially Tom Taylor. I haven't seen too many Arrow stuff with him. You know, we've gotten like outside of Deceased.
Yeah, Deceased is the big one because there was a lot of Green Arrow and Black Canary stuff early on, and
yeah, but like as far as playing with those characters, he's been pretty, isolated to certain sections. Like there was no Arrow characters in Suicide Squad, so yeah, it's very exciting, especially as a longtime Green Arrow fan. Like it sucks he hasn't had a book for a while.
Yeah, obviously we got a little tired of these last year because they were sort of throwing them out a bit too frequently, and it was worse. It was worse as well because they all got delayed, and then we got 3 of them in 1 month. I do think this feels a bit more special, A, because we haven't had one in a while, but also because the character in question doesn't have a book, and we feel like he probably should have a book. So I think we're a bit more welcoming of this news, regardless of it being a 100-page book that we need to throw into whatever week it happens to land on. But
I think it comes out the last week, so that might be. Let me check.
A lot of good names.
Yeah.
Green Arrow's first appearance, for those who are curious, was in 1941 in More Fun Comics issue 73. Try and note that down for your trivia, because if you'd asked me where Green Arrow's first appearance was, there was no way I was ever pulling More Fun Comics 73 out my ass.
No.
So that is cool.
But yeah, so I looked and it is the 5th Tuesday, and there's actually 5 Wednesdays there too. So it's probably dropping on that 5th week. Because I think it's the 29th, right?
That's right, yeah. So
June 29th, yeah. So that'll be good.
That's good.
100 pages is fine on a 5th week.
Yeah. A couple of 100-page book and a 60-page book on a 5th week is perfectly fine.
That's like 6 regular books.
Yes. They're doing the variants for each decade like they did with all these other specials. We have the list of artists here for these variants. 40s is Michael Cho, 50s is Daniel Warren Johnson, 60s is Neil Adams, 70s is Derek Chu, 80s is Gary Frank, 90s is Howard Porter, 2000s is Jen Bertel, and the 10, is Simone Di Meo. It's weird that Grell's not doing like the 80s or 90s one.
Yeah, but maybe it's because he was focused on the art. He'll probably be doing an art by written by.
True.
In the special,
yeah.
So maybe that's why he passed it. A Gary Frank 80s like Longbow Hunter era though, type of Green Arrow with Canary, you'd assume. It's probably
very possibly.
Really good.
I think Jen Bartel's could be interesting. I expect a sort of neon color scheme on top of the green, perhaps.
Less pastel that she's kind of known for. More of the vivid greens, I would assume. But yeah, there's also the Arrow Corner feels reinvigorated right now with how the story in Infinite Frontier went. right, last week.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's maybe the consolation is they're going to be main characters in Justice League, primarily. So I guess that's where we're going to be looking at them. So at least they're in something, because I think it was true for a while where there was no Green Arrow book, and then Green Arrow just wasn't really in anything either. It wasn't really on any team books, at least on a permanent basis.
Yes, even during the New 52, like there was a book, but it would like it was constantly going through like not rebrandings but reimaginings. You know, they tried to make it close to the show, and then Lemire and Sorrentino came in and did, you know, their whole thing, which is one of my favorite runs of all time. And then, you know, I don't say wallowed, but like after Lemire, it was Ben Percy or Ben Percy, and like it was low key good, but it wasn't doing anything like major. And then Percy, of course, took it over. So it was been pretty consistent. So it's weird, like that we've been so long without it now.
You know, when Ben Percy's over his prime, you can call him Has Been Percy, because he almost said that a second ago. Not that I think he's at that stage, for the record. Obviously, he's not been doing so much DC stuff right now, but the little bit of his Wolverine story that I read that was quite good. So he's still going strong. So that's Green Arrow 100-page 80th anniversary special coming in June. Next up, something we have been waiting on, and this also includes Green Arrow actually, and this is Leviathan Checkmate. After a full year of waiting, when we first had that solicit, because the solicit it was for just after when the break would have been. Although when it was solicited, didn't know there was going to be a break, admittedly, but it's finally back on schedule. It's back on the solicits for June, apparently. So there's some
excited for it. I mean, Bendis Malieve doing, you know, seeming like espionage stuff. It's right up the alley. We were talking about Malieve, you know, what's he up to right now? And this a week later answered that.
Yeah, that's just an article mentions that Talia is now a member of the Totality, and maybe that'll conflict with whatever because she was actually in Leviathan originally. Maybe Bendis has reworked that to just make that fit. I don't know, but
didn't know. She kind of helped start Leviathan by accident, right? Didn't they kind of come over and overrun the league, and that's what led her, with her and Lois kind of, you know, clashing in the pages of Leviathan, if I remember right. But yeah, her's a member of the Totality now and all of that stuff. I think I'm excited for this, whatever it means.
Yeah. So neat. Yeah. There's a new variant cover. In fact, I even think the regular cover's new as well, actually. And the main cover is quite pretty. It's a lineup of the team of detectives with a sort of glowing Superman and the shadows behind them, but Lois is chitting on a pawn on a chessboard. So very pretty, very, very pretty.
It's seemingly this might be a Lois Lane book, like in secret, and I'm not mad about that.
Of course you're not mad about that. Why would you be mad about that?
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
you know,
so there you go.
Just a figure of speech.
Of course. So that's Leviathan Checkmate. Before we move on, I'm going to throw it in here randomly so people hear it. Make sure you vote in the top 50 DC characters of all time. We're celebrating our 250th episode next month by having a special vote. You can vote all throughout March. The deadline is the 1st of April. And you'll get the link to the submission in the description of the video or the audio podcast. I've been tweeting it on at DC Comics Podcast. Feel free to ask us on at DC Comics Podcast. If you want the link, just ask for it and we'll provide it. But you have to put a top 20 DC characters. Just make sure you specify who you mean, you know, exactly. Just putting the Flash doesn't really tell me if it's Barry Allen, Wally West, whoever. So, you know, given if you're going to vote at a top 50 DC characters, you probably understand the difference and care about making it clear.
Yeah. I mean, it could be Bart Allen too. He was Flash for a hot second. So yeah, or Jay Garrick. You know, like many mantles of the Flash.
So make sure you do that. You got until the end of the month. So put that in here. And okay, I'll admit I forgot to say it before we started the news, but I thought I don't want to leave it till the end when people have started to tune out. I'm going to throw it in randomly and make people hear it.
I mean that's the best way to do it. Yes. You know.
So next up, we have a new. I assume this is Black Label. It's Black Label. A new Batman book with Garth Ennis and Liam Sharp. A new bat kind of horror book almost with a new reptilian villain. So I'll read the description here. This is a Batman Reptilic. Sorry, Batman. I was gonna say Reptilican. Batman Reptilian.
Is that a reptile that doesn't know it's a reptile? Is that what that is?
No, I don't know if it's a dumb movie or something, but I didn't make up the word Reptilican. It's from something.
Right, but it sounds like you're saying like replicant and reptilian together. That's the joke I was going for. It's always funnier when you have to explain it.
Sorry. I thought the cover for this is quite nice. It's like the close up of like a lizard's eye with the bat symbol in the eye. So you get a good look at what this thing's going to look like. But here's the description they've put out. Gotham City is filled with murderous creatures who stalk the shadows, fell villains with murderous impulses who strike fear into the hearts of every man, woman, and child in the city. But what strikes fear into the hearts of those who terrorize the city? Reads DC synopsis of Batman Reptilian #1. It used to be Batman, but something far more frightening than a mere man has begun stalking the shadows, and it's after Gotham's villains. How savage must a monster be to haunt the dreams of monsters? And there's a page of art here as well, which looks like a proper cool horror book, honestly. I'm pretty pumped for this. I think this is and I know Connor's not here. Connor would probably like it to be made clear that he thinks Garth Ennis is mediocre, so he's not that excited about this. He's annoyed that Liam Sharp's been saddled with him. I've been reading his TKO book, Sarah, and I've thought that's been solid. I liked what I read of Preacher. I read the first hardcover of that, so I'm not anti Ennis.
I wouldn't say I'm anti Ennis, but I do think that sometimes Ennis leans on shock value a little bit too hard.
I've heard that about The Boys. I've heard people say The Boys TV show is better than the comic because the show isn't just about the shock value. It's got a lot more heart, but
yeah, and so like just myself, I remember hearing his Punisher run was like legendary, and like that's kind of what he was meant for. This seems more towards that, Yeah.
And, I think horror can have a lot of shock value and thrive on it. Potentially. I also like the idea of a lizard monster in the sewers that isn't Croc. It's kind of a neat idea. But this is full R rated. They're calling it. Not that comics get rated like movies do, but you know what I mean.
Has Ennis ever properly worked on Batman?
I want to say he has. I want to say he's done something Batman-y at some point, but I might just be pulling that out my ass. But it sounds familiar.
Because I know back in the late 90s he had Hitman, who was based in Gotham. But I don't know if he's actually done Batman proper.
I believe, hold on. Something did come up when I googled this. Let's have a look at this. Oh, that's Azzarello. What? Google, why are you showing me an Azzarello book? What are you doing? Yeah. I'm somewhat pumped. I'm just going to use bibliography in Wikipedia. I'll control F and see what we get here.
There you go. But yeah, no, I like, we all know I love monsters. So monsters in Gotham go hand in hand. So a new one, that might be around Croc or whatever. I think that's pretty cool. And if he can work in Slaughter Swamp and all that type of stuff too.
So according to his Wikipedia, the only Batman story he's really done was a 3-issue arc in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, 91 to 93. It was called Freak Out in 1997. So it wasn't much, and it was a long ass time ago. So
there you go then.
Intrigued. I'm intrigued. No, I like the preview page. It looks different than what I expect from Sharp as well, because the coloring in is very different.
It doesn't seem as intricate like some of his other stuff, like we saw in Green Lantern or in the Brave and the Bold, Wonder Woman story. But it's heavily shadowed, which perfect for something like that.
Yeah, I think this is a case of like him and maybe like the colors and inkers basically realizing this is a different type of book. This should be more horror-esque. This should have a different feel to it. And I actually really appreciate that, because it's sometimes you don't get.
Yeah. And you said this is a 6-issue, right?
6-issue miniseries, yeah. So contained story.
Should be good.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. So moving on. Wonder Woman is getting a color themed book. Like Batman's got black and white, Superman's got red and blue. Wonder Woman now has black and gold as her colors. So, yeah, so this is obviously coming. This is actually to celebrate our 80th anniversary. So just be glad that we're not getting another 100-page Wonder Woman book like we did for issue 750. Because they could have totally done it. They could have said, this is our 80th, even though it's only, 2 years after the other one. Or has it even been 2 years? Was that early last year? It might have been. Was it like January, February last year? It might have been.
Yeah, it had to have been because, remember, it had that story from Snyder.
Yeah.
That teased the JSA. And then we went to break and we didn't know what was going on with that. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll give them credit for restraining themselves a little bit then by not giving her another one. Because they could have.
Yes.
They could have. So this is coming out on June 22nd, limited series. And it's, again, much like the other ones, it's all going to be in just the two tones, right? Or more accurately, black and white with gold.
So we have Batman black and white, Superman red and blue, and now Wonder Woman black and gold. So makes me wonder if they're saving the red and whatever for Flash. She would assume Flash would be the next one.
Red and gold, I guess. Oh, we also have.
I mean, they already did have Harley,
black and red. Or red and black, whatever way around it was.
I think it was black, white, and red, right? That was like because it was playing off of her costume.
It makes sense. So,
yeah.
And obviously, green and black could be Green Lantern. If you wanted to do one of those. It's going to be 6 issues though, and much like the others, it's going to obviously have different stories in it. It's a 40-page first issue. Yeah.
Do we have creative team for the first issue or no?
First issue is a story by writer John Arcudi and artist Ryan Sook. So there you go. Yeah. Also, writer AJ Mendez Brooks. Oh wait, yeah, AJ Lee.
Hey,
do you know what I read?
You got my attention.
I read that name and it took me a second to click.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, my nerdy mind. Former favorite wrestler, former favorite lady wrestler. Of course, it rang a bell. That's cool.
Yeah. So she's working with artist Ming Doyle on a story as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Ming Doyle worked with Punk on something over at Marvel because Punk had done a story in Thor, in one of the Thor specials. That was pretty good. That might have been a different artist though. I'm not. Don't quote me on that, listeners.
And then the third team for the first issue is Nadia Shamas and artist Morgan Beam. So those are your teams.
Well, I was already excited for this, but I never clicked on it. I just saw, oh, cool. They're doing a...
Yeah, at this point, there's such a known quantity because we've, black and white established the format and then, Superman and Harley kind of continued it. And
yeah. So now, AJ is doing a story. And, of course I'm going to pick it up
There was
as if I wasn't.
There was just a weird sort of moment where my brain just, like took in what I just read. I was like, AJ Mendez Brooks, because I think in my head I went, I don't know who that is, and I went, well, wait, actually no, I do know who that is.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Well, I mean, when you know her as AJ Lee forever.
I think it's more just because she's not a comic writer. So in my head I'm thinking, oh wait, that doesn't ring any comic book names or bells. I'm not thinking of anyone. And I was like, oh wait, no, I don't know who that is. She's just not associated with comics.
Does it have her listed as April Mendez Brooks, or does it had it listed as...
No, it's just AJ. I sort of leaned in to check that it was AJ though, because the J is unnaturally close to the A, so it looked kind of like it might be Al rather than AJ. But yeah,
there you go.
There you go. That's cool. Well, that's cheered Matt. That's made Matt's day.
That did. I mean, I already was gonna check it out, right? But that definitely drove it home.
I wasn't sure you would like her that much. I thought you might be jealous that she gets to sleep with CM Punk every night.
No. It's jealous both sides.
Because you like to snuggle with CM Punk is the implication I'm trying to make.
Yeah. They're the more Punk gets away from wrestling, the less he's. I still appreciate everything he's done, right? But other people pop up. So he's still great though. Him having hot takes on Twitter and whatnot, and him announcing last week that he's not the big signing because he's going to be watching the Blackhawks game that Sunday. That just cracked me up. Yeah.
Well, we have another special coming in June. This is the DC Pride special. There's another 80-page book with various creators, LBG2, LGBT. That's a sequel. That's a sequel to LGBTQ creators. Anthology of stories. We got a Batwoman story by James Tynion IV and Trung Lee Win. We get Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn by Mariko Tamaki and Amy Reeder. Midnighter by Steve Orlando and Stephen Byrne. So, and obviously Orlando's been heavily attached to that character for forever.
Yes. It's almost Orlando's character.
Yeah.
Now.
Flash Earth 11 by Danny Lohr and Lisa Sterl. Green Lantern, which is Alan Scott for the record, which it makes sense.
Yes.
And Obsidian. I mentioned and Obsidian by Sam Johns and Klaus Janson. Aqualad by Andrew Wheeler and Luciano Vecchio. Apologies if I'm butchering out these names. I'm doing my best. Dreamer by Nicole Maines and Rachel Stott, and that's notable because Nicole Maines is the actor who plays Dreamer on Supergirl, so that's neat. Renee Montoya by Vita Alea and Skylar Partridge, and Pied Piper by Sina Grace, Rostein, and Ted Brandt. So that is your list of stories and creators for the one shot. And you went along with this announcement to also mention that Crush and Lobo are getting a new book as well. So,
which we kind of already knew that, right? That was in the 10 that were announced.
Yeah, we knew that, but I think this is the first time since that a list. I mean, that was official because it was their list. It wasn't like it leaked, but
no, I know, but this has like actual listing of it. You know what I mean? Like with this, so
yes.
But yeah, I mean, we didn't know anything about this special, so that's pretty cool that they're doing this. A lot of good creative teams, a lot of fun characters that should get the spotlight.
Yeah,
like Pied Piper. I haven't read a Pied Piper story in. It's been a while, right? Because Pied Piper didn't even really show up in Williamson's Flash.
I think the last. I mean, he popped up in an issue of Flash that I did for previously this week, but obviously that's an old Mark Waid issue. There's going to be a foreword by Mark and Draco, who also worked on Love Is Love, which was the other Pride. That wasn't just a DC thing. That was kind of a more industry-wide thing.
It was one of those specials where they pulled the companies pulled together to do
it was
something.
after the mass shooting. That was to So nice callback to that. They're also doing a bunch of Pride variants because obviously June they're celebrating Pride, so they've got like Batman 109's got a Jen Bartel cover, Crush and Lobo issue 1's got a Yoshitani cover, and there's a whole other list. I won't read them all, but there's a bunch of variants coming as well. So yeah,
cool.
So that is a thing. There's one of the covers. Harley Quinn 4's got a Harley and Ivy covers. There's an image of it. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yep. Yeah. We'll talk about that in the Gotham. Because I have some feelings.
Okay, I'm sure you do have feelings. Next up, so this one was exciting for me because obviously we were mostly really big fans of the Hill House part of Black Label. And we don't have a Hill House book, but we have something that feels akin to it because we have a new horror book coming from Black Label from James Tynion IV with Alvaro Martinez, who of course worked with Tynion on a lot of his detective and so on. So this is called The Nice House on the Lake, and the cover is delightful. It's like a head coming up through water, but there's skeletons all around the waters.
It's very poltergeist.
Yes. Really, really cool stuff. So this is a 6-issue miniseries, Black Label book. And I'm excited for these Black Label books in some ways because it is nice to have like DC stuff that isn't just the DC characters. It's nice to just sort of do some more kind of interesting original stories here. So yeah, it all begins with a nice house on the lake. Everyone who was invited to the house knows Walter. Well, they know him a little anyway. Some met him in childhood, some met him months ago, and Walter's always been a little off. But after the hardest year of their lives, nobody was going to turn down Walter's invitation to an astonishingly beautiful house in the woods overlooking the enormous Sylvan Lake. It's beautiful, it's opulent, it's private. So a week of putting up with Walter's weird little schemes and nicknames in exchange for the vacation of a lifetime? Why not? All of them were at the moment in their lives where they could feel themselves pulling away from their other friends. Wouldn't a chance to reconnect be nice? Wouldn't an escape from the horrors of everyday lives be idyllic? Would you accept this invitation from one of your oldest friends? And that's the description. That's the sort of the teaser text for the first issue.
Mind you, I haven't seen What About Bob since, probably it came out. This sounds like a horror version of that.
Oh, actually,
this is a person you don't want to be around.
I just want to correct myself. It's not a 6-issue, it's a 12-issue miniseries. Apologies.
Ooh. Look at that. Double.
Yeah, that's in June 1st. Obviously, we've been pretty big fans of Tynion for the most part in this show. So
yeah. Well, he's had Something's Killing the Children. That it's a book I want to get into, but I've already made promises to other people to read other books first. Hence why I bought Once and Future this week and had to order These Savage Shores because my shop didn't have it in. So, but Something Killing the Children might be after that. I finished Fatale, by the way, which I don't know if you've read all of Pete, but I think you might dig parts of it.
I read the first few issues and I kind of had a hard time remembering anything from previous issues.
Yeah, it gets towards the 4th and 5th. It kind of rounds more into the horror side of things. So, but yeah, this sounds interesting. Like I don't know exactly what to expect, but again, I was getting from that description kind of like What About Bob, but if it was a horror movie. Yeah.
So a 12-issue mini horror series, Tynion the Fourth, Alvaro Martinez, and I should also mention Jordi Belaire's names on that cover as well. I presume doing coloring, which is not a bad thing to hear, quite frankly.
No.
So
not at all.
Very, very cool. So that's the nice house on the lake, to be specific. So that's basically all the proper news I had. There is just one thing here that I don't really understand it, but I thought I'll just mention it for people, which is that Darwin Cook's widow has asked DC not to use her husband's work in Batman NFT crypto art. Now, if anyone can explain to me what NFT crypto art is, I will try and talk about it. But as of right now, I don't really understand it. So
no. So from what I understand, I read a thing this morning that crypto art's just the newest kind of bubble of people trying to make money. And from what I've heard is that you can take the art, and it's all digital, right? But as Conrad was explaining to us, to me at least yesterday, it involves this blockchain kind of thing that takes up a lot of energy to produce, and so it ends up not being good for anybody unless you're selling it. So it's just one of these bubbles, I think, that pops up and almost seems like a pyramid scheme. People trying to get money quick, and you kind of just get left holding the bag.
Cryptocurrency in general, I have a vague understanding of. This particular branch, I'm not entirely sure of, but
no.
I mean, the fact that DC themselves are engaging in it makes it feel like it's bigger than just a bunch of scumbags doing it. But I mean,
yeah. Again, I don't know. I tend to stay out of this type of stuff. Once I had read, like, it can be super skeezy, is that you don't even have to own the artwork, that you can upload it and then trade it for, however much someone thinks it's worth.
But why is someone buying it though? What is the person buying it getting exactly?
I don't know.
Okay.
When it's digital like that, and it's not like I understood when the Wu-Tang Clan put up their album to the highest bidder, and then the highest bidder could do what they wanted with it. I understand that because that is something that's created, that's in the form. And sure, it might just be in digital form of like an MP3 file or whatever. But that's something tangible. A piece of digital art that I don't get.
Is it a 3D model? Can you like spin it around? And I mean,
I don't know. It's just one of those things that once it started popping up, it started like my Twitter feed started talking about NFT stuff, and I was like, what do I want to click? And it's just it all confused me, much like the stock market stuff, which I'm still not 100% sure on all the stuff that happened, back in January, and now this comes in, and yeah, just save your money, kids. Buy comics. That's where I'm at. Buy vinyl.
I feel like Matt would attest that buying comics is not linked to saving money. I just want to put that out there.
No, but what I mean is, at least when it comes to comics, whether they're digital, right, or they're in the physical, it's something tangible that could, the digital not so much, but it could accrue value one day. Just buy what you like. Spend money on stuff that you like. I don't know. Like, my brother's really into vinyl. That's why I brought that up. And he doesn't know what to do with it, but he knows that he likes it. He doesn't have a record player, but he has vinyl.
He can't even play it?
Yeah. No.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, again. But at least with that vinyl, I understand that at least in the pop punk scene, they're limited edition pressings that you can get. So, the wax is a different color, if you will, and there's a collectability to that, but with this, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
All
right. And I realize it's something.
Sure. But yeah,
I realize part of the vinyl thing is collecting it for art's sake, because it's fairly big size and you get a big cover. Some people frame them.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I don't understand having a few without a record player, but
no, but
collecting like lots of them, I don't. That's weird. Whatever.
Yeah, again, but I understand Darwin Cook's wife not wanting his art to be used in this kind of sketchy thing, because his art is very iconic.
I feel like I just don't understand why there's any money to be made off. I don't understand. To me, this is like sharing an image on the internet. It's free and everyone just does it, and it doesn't matter.
Well,
I don't.
Apparently, the band Kings of Leon produced an album that was NFT, which doesn't make sense to me. Like,
I have never felt older talking about something than I do right now.
Yeah. No. And this is where Pete's like, yeah, I bought a whole bunch of NFT images. That's what the Patreon money's going towards. Oh no. What if someone NFTs Connor, and that's how CR21 actually spreads?
The digital virus. So somehow Connor's biology get turned into a digital virus.
Because he has no soul. It just adapts, if you will. Oh boy. All right. Yeah, I don't understand things.
Yeah. All right. That's the news. That's the news. Okay. Let's talk about books. Superman issue 29. Philip K. Johnson and Phil Hester. And the main story. As a standard practice now going forward, I am not going to bother listing the backup creative team. I'll mention them when we get there, but for the sake of the list of contents on the timestamps not being super long, I'm not going to write multiple writers and artists for everyone. But anyway,
fair enough.
So this is the start of the run proper. Obviously, we got a hell of a preview out of the Future State issues, but this is the first issue in the real run going forward. So we're starting with a story called The Golden Age, which heavily features John.
Yes, which isn't when I think Golden Age isn't what it ended up being, which is always fun when something like that happens, right?
Yeah, I think because John was not focused on in those Future State issues, I don't know if we expected there to be much John focus from Johnson, but the fact that this first issue is like no, everything's from his perspective. This entire first issue is John's view of his father. This is what it's all about. It's all about, the story here is about a child for the first time seeing their parent be basically less than Superman. The idea that when you're a little kid, you look up to your parents, you think they're invulnerable, you think they can't do anything wrong, you think they're perfect, they'll always be there to save you, there's never going to be a danger with them. But then eventually you realize they're human beings and they can make mistakes and they can get hurt, and so you scale that up to Superman here, where John sees Clark get hurt, and it's kind of the
So
isn't here for this.
fighting some interdimensional thing, and him and John are going up to do try to take care of it in the way that they do as supers. But there was one thing that really stuck out to me is that John being so worried about him, because not just because of the future, but because of that stuff where he realizes his dad is still his dad on on a human level, and that it finally dawned on him that his dad might not be around forever, and that he can't be Superman because Clark is Superman. It's like, yeah, it can be a title, but at the end of the day, he is Superman.
It's not, yeah, it's not. It's, it's not just a role that's to be filled. He is Superman.
Yeah, and I really like that sentiment, because that's when you think about parents and whatnot.
If I can make a minor critique that I don't think would be a critique separated, like if this story just came out and it was just this, I wouldn't have this critique. And I realize that Future State were all possible futures, but it is a little bit weird to read just after Future State ends, where we see Superman exist to this old man who's there eons in the future when there's descendants of Kents. The idea that John is worried in the first issue of the Superman run that his dad's going to die soon because he knows from the future that his time's almost up is a bit weird. Like, I get that it doesn't matter what happened in Future State, that we are doing new things now, but it is a bit just jarring as a reader because we just did that.
Right, so let me spin it this way, and this might just be spin, but he's talking about the Legion, and he's talking about how what's going on in their present is the past where John just came back from. So he knows things that he's not supposed to. However, we've seen that, like, because timey-wimey, right, it could be wrong. John knowing this might completely subvert the future in there, right, that they're talking about. Or, the Legion was just wrong. Whatever they thought happened to Superman didn't necessarily go down that way. But to John, it doesn't make it any less real, because to him, this might be the last time he sees his dad. So
I get it.
He wants to take care of him.
I get it, and it's not a huge critique, but there was a moment when he started talking about, like, knowing his dad's time was almost up, that I just kind of went, I don't really believe you. I mean, I wouldn't believe him anyway because it's comics and the Superman, but it's just a thing, because we just went through all those stories in Future State of seeing Superman do the beard and be at the end of the universe with Wonder Woman and doing all that stuff. And I get that that's all possible futures, but there was just something that when he started talking about it, it rang a little bit like, I have no reason to, I don't know, accept this right now. I can't roll with that.
I took it as John's like misplaced care. You know what I mean? Like, because he's young and he's going to worry about it. And, to Clark, it might not be anything where he's just like, yeah, man, Doomsday killed me. Yeah, here I am. Like, I just feel like it's John having to learn that he can't worry about that type of stuff. And as someone that goes through bouts of anxiety, that's something that I've had to work on. So to see it coming through from this character, it rang true for me. So
yeah, no, I mean, it was just a thing when as soon as he started talking about it, the part of me just kind of checked out a little bit, because I'm like, I don't know, I'm not like, I'm not in the headspace to be talking about this potential. It's not to say that anything in it is poorly written, because it's not. It's a really well told issue. The majority of the books even have dialogue. It's just the narration, who I don't believe we ever find out who's talking, do we? Like, we don't know who's narrating yet.
I don't think so. I think we'll find out in the next in action.
There is a green green background to the box, which maybe we could speculate based on that. But ultimately, most of the issue is this narration talking about how John looks up to his father, about learning that he maybe can be defeated. We do see Amanda Waller, who's not behind the breach in space that's letting these beings into our universe, but when she learns that something from it does hurt Superman, although notably not John, just Superman, she tells the Star Lab satellite to not close it yet, because it bears further investigation. She eventually agrees to close it once too many monsters start coming out, that it's like, okay, we've done as much research as we can now, close it. We've learned stuff, we've accomplished something. And that's it's during this whole kerfuffle where Superman does get hurt. Not seriously, but he does get cut, which is still pretty notable for Superman.
Yeah.
So,
I'm also wondering if this is a little bit of foreshadowing to what leads to Warworld with Superman in those Worlds at War issues. If that's where he goes that John's worried about. But there's also the scene that pops out, and I don't have my handy dandy translator for Kryptonian, but there's text boxes with Kryptonian, and seeming that Helix seems to be worried about something. So I wonder what's going on with that. If that plays into what's going on with the Rift and whatnot too. But yeah, because it says results confirmed. They're down at the bottom. So I think that's all interesting. But no, I really like all of that stuff there with John and Superman, and talking about like when he was a kid, and just the game with the pine cone. It's called Coney Ball, which just made me remember the stuff that I really loved at the beginning of Rebirth. Them living out in Hamilton County. So that's all. Johnson coming in and being like, yeah, look, we're not exactly starting over, playing within the bounds, which I always appreciate as a longtime comic reader.
Oh, no, I
right?
definitely appreciate that we're talking about John being aged up, that we're still dealing with that, because that's not something that Lois and Superman should just get over. Like, they lost like the majority of his childhood. Like, he jumped from being 10 to being, what, 16, 17,
18.
yeah, something like that. So Clark trying to bond over this old game, and the irony here being that usually it's the parent who gets old and forgets something, but it's actually John who's like, no, this was a long time ago. I don't remember how to play this game. And Clark's like, well,
Well, it wasn't that long ago to me, but that's also like a parent going with like, kids don't understand time that way. But to the parent, it was like, oh no, it wasn't that long ago.
But
really.
Of course, here it's literal. There was actually a time difference for them, yeah.
Right. And so I do like all that. And it's just, again, Johnson just gets Superman, which makes me happy. Because there was a time where I would always worry who was taking over Superman. And like, hearing Bendis was doing it, you feel a little bit more at ease, but you're still kind of unsure. But within this is his 4th issue now, writing the character, I feel like it's in very safe hands going forward. And yeah, it feels nice not to have to worry for once.
Yeah. Obviously, the issue's big cliffhanger is that just as they're having this bonding, Kalex is trying to talk to Superman, and the rift that was there was not actually the first rift, it was just the biggest one. There was lots of little minor ones, and the big rift is opening. So the issue ends with a big rift opening, and a giant version of whatever these interdimensional beings are is coming out. That's your big full page spread to wrap things up on. So there's a glorious page before that, though, of Superman and John both flying towards the rift, but it's kind of broken up into these horizontal panels in the middle. So the second last page is very nicely split up with it's almost like a full page spread, but then there's these panels like laid over the top of it, and it just gives it this kind of sequential feeling to it. It's a good first issue. I mean, I don't want my critique of part of the plot kind of feeling kind of weird after Future State to get in the way of it too much, because ultimately it's not a big deal, and shouldn't in the long run. I think the way John thinks of his father is very sort of in tune for Superman, and not quite as strong, but definitely I can tell comes from the same mind that brought us that first Future State issue, which was all about the aura of Superman and what people see in him and how they look up to him. And we're kind of getting that from John's perspective here, which I think is really neat. I know Connor was expecting me to be lukewarm on the art. I don't remember what Phil Hester issue we did before that I was mean to. I don't recall.
I think that the thick blocky lines where it feels like almost like the Batman and Superman animated series, right? It fits really well. And Hester's sense of action in through these, like sure, I say blocky, but there's still a fluidity to all of it. Like when there's a lot of them floating, right? Because they both can fly, and there's like almost a bounce to the art that I really like. But yeah, so what?
Yeah,
I don't ever remember you being negative on Hester.
Maybe it was
So
previously. Maybe they did like an old issue or something that we talked about.
I'm
I don't think the art is bad by any means. I'd say it's maybe not perfect to my taste. It's kind of like it almost feels like it's going for kind of the McGuinness kind of the early Loeb stuff.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting some of that vibes from it. It's maybe not exactly what I was expecting from this run based on those two Yannon issues from Future State, which were obviously very different. But yeah, I don't know, like, because I saw that tweet from Conrad before I read it, and I was kind of coming in thinking I was going to dislike the art, and I kind of came in and went, "Oh, this is fine." Admittedly, I'm not over the moon about it. I mean, Conrad was praising it to the high heavens like it was the second coming. I think it's solid art, but I'm not in love with it.
Looking up on what he's worked on, there's Wonder Woman 605 to 614. So maybe, did you guys cover that in previously?
Nope.
No? There's Nightwing, there's Green Arrow. He's on Godzilla, Kingdom of the Monsters. So, any of these ring a bell?
No.
Maybe a Swamp Thing, but I don't know how long ago that goes back.
So, I don't know. I'm sure if he was here, he would moan and tell me why he expected me to hate this.
Yeah.
I think like the bar was set so high by those first two Future State issues, which for me are like, I gave those like 9.5s and 10s, and I think this is a really solid first issue. I like the overall tone that it's got. I love the pacing. I think it flows really well. Whoever this voice is feels very enigmatic, and it's kind of the sort of feeling that I love in a comic book. I think the issue overall, if we're getting to the ratings here, this is a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Yeah.
I'm gonna take it a little bit higher. For sure. 8.5. I really like the art, and I think Johnson just understands Superman at a level that I don't think I haven't felt this way for a Superman writer in quite a long time. So it feels nice and comforted, so that's worth the extra half point.
Yeah, I'm excited for the run. I guess the only thing I would say about the art is that the style is a bit more kind of cartoony than perhaps the tone of the story makes me think fits it. If that makes sense. I feel like the tone of the story feels like it maybe would belong to maybe a more shaded artist rather than the flatter cartoony style of this one. But I mean, it's not really that big of a critique, to be honest.
I don't know.
But yeah, so a giant alien or interdimensional being coming through the portal at the end in space.
Yeah.
Which is what John and thing. I just want to briefly mention as well. There was a scene with Lois where they're just sort of sitting watching TV as the narration is playing out, which I thought was a nice little scene. The idea that John falls asleep watching TV,
like a kid sitting in front of the parents.
Yeah,
like a little kid.
Because it's as the narration is talking about the golden age is a wonderful thing, this golden age of childhood, but it doesn't last forever. I do kind of like that. This is like just a snapshot in that golden age of like the parents, just enjoying spending time as their kid falls asleep in front of the TV. I don't know. I like the. Because so much of the issue is there's these big fights in space and all these big things going on. I kind of like that you have this quiet moment.
Small, quieter moment.
So, there you go. That's Superman 29. Wonder Woman's... Oh, wait, no. Hold on. I'm forgetting those backups and all of the books there. You're right. Hold on. So there's a... I was going to say a Jimmy story, but it's actually not. I thought it was a Jimmy story based on the first couple panels, but it's actually a Bibbo story.
Do you want to guess how excited I was when I turned it and it wasn't just Jimmy and it was Bibbo?
I can imagine.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing that would have made this more exciting for you is if instead of the blonde, it was Bibbo and like Guy Gardner getting out of a limo to go do stuff.
Yeah. For sure.
So
I love Bibbo.
This is Sean Lewis writing with Sam Basri on the art for this backup. And Jimmy's around. Jimmy kind of introduces the story, but it's a Bibbo story where somehow he's got this, this very attractive woman going to a movie with him. It's a movie premiere as well, I think, because it's like a red carpet.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. At first I'm just like, what is Bibbo doing? Like, this is not the bar that he frequents down on the docks, or that he works at.
Apparently, Jimmy's got him into writing so that he can tell the story of the common man in Metropolis.
Which I do love, considering that these are two of Superman's best pals, right? Like, Bibbo worships the idea of Superman, and what he means to Metropolis, and then Jimmy's his actual best friend. So the fact like they're trying to give the other perspective of Metropolis is something that's a great idea from Jimmy. Like he doesn't get those too many.
Yeah, because the idea being this is maybe jumping to the end when he's closing narration, but the idea from Bibbo is that we can't rely on Superman to solve all the small problems. We actually have to stand up. We have to take the inspiration of Superman and actually tackle a lot of things ourselves. Admittedly, maybe this story goes a little too far in the sense that Bibbo takes on an alien being on his own with a simple punch, but that's fine. So basically, the blonde woman, the attractive woman, is actually just a projection from an alien. I don't know if her name's actually Projectress or if that's just what the other guy calls her.
That they calls them, but I'm gonna call her that.
Projectress.
And
then he what Deadstream, I think it said his name was.
Yeah.
It sounds like a rejected Transformer, if I'm honest. If I'm rating that name.
A little bit.
But he sort of comes in and disguises a charming, handsome man and starts to basically get Bibbo to get into a fight by hitting on her. And he eventually gets mad when he says something in the theater and throws him into a fountain. But then he reveals himself for what he is. Deadstream is actually, he could turn into a big water monster using the water from the fountain.
Yeah.
And Bibbo takes him on, although he turns it off the water first, which is kind of what a lot of his power's coming from.
Smart.
But yeah. But then, the blonde woman disappears, and it's like, hey, you were targeted, and Jimmy's like, hey, I think you were a victim of some monstrous beings. Then it ends with Bibbo with his typewriter, and he's writing about how we have to do stuff as well. We can't just leave it to Superman, with a minor cliffhanger of these two beings of Deadstream and Projectress watching through the window from a distance. So this story's not done. They're targeting Bibbo for something, but yes, we're getting a Bibbo backup story.
I like that their plan comes from to get to Superman and Metropolis. You can't just go they said if you're gonna destroy a house, you start with the foundation. And so the fact that Bibbo is the foundation of Metropolis for Superman, because if you break Bibbo, right, that's kind of the common belief of people believing in Superman. But Bibbo's not that difficult to break, right? And he comes up with that realization of, yeah, Superman's there, but if we rely on him too much, then we get too weak, and that we have to take care of each other as much as he takes care of Metropolis. And it's just a really nice, you don't get thoughtful Bibbo that much, right? He's always just kind of that aw shucks guy. Yet here, I thought I liked this a whole lot. I was surprised.
Yeah, it was a very interesting not a counterpoint, but just a different story to the main story to kind of wrap up with. A couple of details I like in the last page is that he's got a hole in his sock, his toes sticking out in the art. He's also got a photo of him and Superman on the wall right behind him.
Yep.
Probably his most prized possession. And a book leveling out his little table with his TV on it. Still, I would almost argue maybe it's just easier to draw an old CRT TV, but I do think it's an intentional choice for Bibbo to still have a crappy old chunky TV.
Yeah.
Oh, Matt, your mic's gone.
Yeah.
There you go. So, as far as, we're kind of judging these backups for the first time this month. It's kind of the first month of having all these backups as a regular feature in the books. I'd say this one's a fairly positive one.
Yes.
What would you like to rate this?
I'm gonna give this one a 7.5. It's good, but it's not amazing, but it did surprise me. So, and I do like the art, although on the last page, I'm gonna pull a Connor here. The Dreadwave guy, his eyes are very, very far apart. It looks a little bit weird in that final panel.
Yeah, to be fair, he's not human though, so he kind of he's a little kind of alien and monstrous. So
it is a little bit goofy though. Just it's weird.
I tell you what else is far apart. Her boobs.
Yeah, well, she's projecting, so clearly that's what.
Some clear.
No, that's her.
Yeah, so
that's her, whatever she is. But yeah. For a second when it first started, I thought it was Cat Grant, just because of the blonde.
You thought Bibbo and Cat Grant were going out for a movie date?
I thought whatever's going on, with Cat, we haven't seen her in a while, so. But yeah. Pretty good.
Okay. I mean, do we rate these as a whole? I suppose we probably should. What are you giving the whole book?
Let's see. I'm gonna give it an 8.
Yeah, I'll split the difference between the stories and go 7.5. It's funny, it's not necessarily the knockout the park that I was hoping for the first issue of this run, but it's also nothing dissuasive either. It's like, no, it's a solid start, and I'm excited to see where Johnson builds up to from here. So, that's cool. Wonder Woman 770, Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad writing with Travis Moore, again, on the main story. We'll get to the backup when we get to it. So that's when I had a lot of weird stuff get into it, because it was like, okay, Wonder Woman, because of where she went at the end of, Infinite Frontier Zero, or the end of Death Metal, but then specifically the end of Infinite Frontier Zero, where she kind of rejected the offer, and it seemed like she was trying to go back down to Earth, but given the solicits for everything else, it didn't seem like she was going to make it. Like, she's going somewhere else first. And this kind of becomes, okay, this is where she is right now. So I don't want to call it a dream, because it's not a dream, but it's kind of, this is one of these comic stories where the character is trapped in some kind of loop or some kind of, mystical world that's separate from everything.
Yeah, so we kind of knew from Solicit she's in the sphere of the gods, which when you look at multiverses, it kind of lays outside the multiverse, like it kind of wraps it around. So who knows what that means in the Omniverse at this point. But yeah, so if you are familiar with, Viking mythology and Valhalla, it is a time, no, I don't want to say a time loop, but it is one of these things where, you go, you fight, you die, you wake up the next day and do the same thing.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of like any story where a character's trapped in like a town or something like that, where something weird's going on and clearly like part of their memory, and that's true here. Like, Wonder Woman doesn't remember everything. She remembers her name's Diana, but she does not remember Wonder Woman. She does not remember the specifics of who she was.
She kind of remembers that she was like invulnerable to weapons, which he thinks, is kind of funny, because if she was, she wouldn't end up in Valhalla.
Well, she also remembers at one point that she thinks she could fly, but so that's the other thing, is that she has none of her powers here. She's just seemingly, I'd say mortal, but technically she's waking back up and like fighting every day. So mortal's not exactly right either, but no powers. So she's in, a version of Asgard, where they fight every day. When they eventually die, they spend the night in Valhalla, and then they wake up the next day, and it's time to fight again, basically, after maybe a bit of rest. And she meets this character. Is it Siegfried, I want to say?
Siegfried, which there is an old Germanic poem that's about Siegfried and his quest for the sword. And it's been copied. It ends up in all sorts of mythologies. I figured Connor would have had a real good time with this one. But yeah, that's his sword, and it's well known, so I'm sure that'll be a key to whatever's going on into the future, because they keep pointing out his sword. His name is Graham, and yeah, but he's there and is kind of her guide to everything that's going on.
And love interest as well, to an extent. I mean, there's kind of there's a moment, because they're drinking in Valhalla together, and he's giving her lots of this mead. Says it's really strong because Odin's son likes it strong. As she puts it. But she ends up waking up in his bed, and he's like, "No, nothing happened." But they're flirting a lot. In fact, if I have a complaint about dialogue, is it later on when she's talking to the squirrel? She says, "Oh, I've got a thing, not a date, but I did make a promise to be somewhere." And I'm like, "Why is she talking like a teenager? Like, I don't like. Why is she talking about this? Like, she's a grown-ass woman who's not shy. Like, why is she like tripping up and like be? I guess maybe it's trying to tell her she does have some sort of romantic feeling for him, but I don't know. It felt weird for her to say that.
Yeah. Well, it's as she's figuring stuff out again. Like, I don't know. She just feels awkward.
How do you feel about this story conceptually? Like, this is what we're doing for at least an arc in Wonder Woman.
I enjoy it. I mean, I'm not gonna be mad at Wonder Woman plus Vikings, right? And playing with the different mythologies. So, here it gets in there, because that squirrel, Ratatosk, is in Norse mythology, right? There's the World Tree, which we get introduced to, Yggdrasil. And Ratatosk goes from the roots to the top so people can communicate. right? So he's kind of like a messenger on this tree. So as soon as he popped up, I was like, okay, there's some more mythological stuff going on because the world tree connects all the different realms. And by doing so, it's almost like an interdimensional gate. So I'm wondering if this, whatever brought her here, right? Because Radishkos is like, well, if you're here, I kind of brought you to help,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, Wonder Woman doesn't obviously know how she ended up here or exactly what led her to this place. The squirrel, and I'm saying squirrel because it's mostly a squirrel. It's got a little horn as well, but it's a squirrel.
Yeah, he has a little tusk. So the name actually comes from, old Norse for what is it, like tusk rat, right? So Ratatosk. So we'll go with a squirrel with a horn on its head. Why not?
Yeah,
it looks cool.
And obviously every time she sleeps, she has like not even a dream, like someone who knows who she is trying to talk to her and tell her where she is and explain, you don't belong here, you have powers, you're Diana of the Mascara. I did think I noted, because there's a silhouette, the first time we have this sort of sequence in the all white and black, the figure, whoever it is, says, I get it, this place is kinda cool. The fact that they say kinda cool implies that it's not like another godlike character. That sounds like a human character that's trying to talk to her.
Or someone that spent a lot of time around humans.
Someone who would speak that casually, I guess, is the...
and that's why I'm thinking, like, whatever this is, it is in the sphere of the gods. We're going to see not just the Viking mythologies, we're going to see them all play out. And if this is someone like Hercules or a demigod like that, that's, kind of like Diana, I think that would be cool. But it does seem like it's someone familiar.
Yeah.
With the way that they're keeping it in silhouette.
It looks like a guy just based on the silhouette, but I mean, again, it's just the phrasing of the dialogue. It's kind of, again, it's kind of cool. It sounds very casual and very kind of human. So, like you say, it could be someone who's just gotten comfortable with humans, but isn't a human necessarily, or is a human. So, I mean, we'll see either way. Because it's funny, because I think the art's really good. I think it's very well detailed. It's expressive. Travis Moore's art here is maybe some of the best Travis Moore art I've seen. It's really good stuff. I think the story flows well enough, and I think it went in at a nice pace. I found myself into the comic bookiness of the whole thing. The core concept though of her like going through potentially multiple like different places like Asgard, and like almost like a dreamlike sort of state where she's going through different phases before eventually getting out and back into the real world. Like, I have to admit, like, nothing in this issue bothered me, but when I think of that in a sort of long-term plan, I'm like, I don't know if I'm that interested in that as a concept. Like,
that's the difference between you and me.
Part of me goes, are we really going to be doing this kind of, she's trapped in like a limbo for, arcs and arcs?
I don't think necessarily trapped in. I do think that whatever led her there is because the world tree is sick, right?
Sure.
And the world tree is this connection between other realms. I feel that's why she's there, because they felt like, this goddess of compassion is the one that can solve this for us and almost fix the sphere of the gods, whatever it is. So I'm here for that, because it's balancing all the elements of Wonder Woman that I like, right? It's got the mythology. It has her as kind of like this, not quite a warrior, but like this, kind of paragon of virtue that the world tree could reach out to, or whatever it is. As long as it doesn't start going into the kind of sci-fi more, because I tend not to like when Wonder Woman edges into the sci-fi. And when you think about like the multiverse and omniverse and where that fits in, I just hope there's not like a bait and switch there, as the more we get going. But no, I really enjoyed this.
I mean, I enjoyed it well enough. Like, I think it's a solidly told comic, and the art, like I say, is very good. There's moments where they're kind of flirting with each other and they're smelling at each other. I don't really like this guy that much because he's kind of just generic pretty boy in a lot of ways. But
yeah, I mean that's kind of the archetype of Siegfried.
Yeah, but like
from the Eddas.
But I don't. So like the art's very good. It flows well enough. The battles are fine. Like it's kind of one of those things though where it's just more of a long-term conceptual thing where the teasing of where things are going and whatnot. Because the ending here, of course, because she couldn't see him, she couldn't find him at the hall of Valhalla, right?
Right.
Towards the end of the issue, and she goes looking for him, goes back out to the squirrel in the tree, and all that. And basically, the squirrel says, the Valkyries never came for him at the end of the battle that they're supposed to. The Valkyries are disappearing, and this might very well, be connected to the World Tree dying. So and then Siegfried gets up, but he can't see. He's lost. He's in like a fog, and he kind of like I don't know if it suggests he's actually consumed by the fog.
Right.
It kind of looks like he might be because his text is like disappearing. He's like, I'm cold, help me, Diana, and he's going into the green smoke or the green mist. I hate to be I don't want to be a downer because I actually think it was fairly well told. I just conceptually I'm less excited about this, and I'm already like part of me is going, couldn't we have had like just like couldn't Donna Troy have had if we have to have Diana gone for like 6 months or a year, could we not just had like Donna Troy stories for a year instead? is my feeling. Yeah,
but we're getting a Yara Floor series.
We are. I'm looking forward to that. Yes.
If this is my bargain, right, that's fine because I'm way more excited for Yara Floor. But I'm not mad at this. Again, this one issue in, I can't, like it just.
No, I'm not saying it's like 1-to-1, right? But how I feel conceptually about this is very similar to what Nightmares was to Batman, like Tom King's run. Like it's kind of the similar vibe of like, oh, we're going through a different, and it's not a dream, but I kind of the same feeling of disconnect where I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going through these various worlds, and maybe it's all important, maybe it all matters, but Wonder Woman not remembering who she is exactly and having to rediscover herself. Like, I don't know, I feel like I've done that beat so many times in comic books across different characters that I'm just kind of like, you know what? Conceptually, I'm not excited by this, and I'm happy to read the next issue because I think this read well enough, and I'm in for the art, and I want to see what happens. I'll see where it goes, but conceptually here, I'm just kind of like, like,
I mean, I kind of figured that from you because you're not big into the mythological stuff like me and Connor are, so I'm not surprised. But at the same time, people's taste is people's taste.
I do think there's a distinction though, because it's not like she's actually just went to actual Asgard, and this is because this whole looping thing where she's like dying and coming back. This is not just in straight up Asgard though, right?
Yeah, no. That's Valhalla is Odin's. That's his hall, right? And so all the best warriors end up there. That's what the Vikings are striving for. That's why they're such fearsome fighters. Is like if they died a good death, they got to go on there. Like their afterlife was more of this, right? So in that until Ragnarok happens, which is their end of time, their Armageddon.
Hold on. You're done a path here. So you're telling me that she's not in Asgard and she's just in Valhalla the whole time?
No. So Valhalla is in Asgard, right? Asgard's a realm, right? Valhalla's in that realm.
How is Valhalla in the same place as Asgard? Valhalla's where they go after they die.
Right, because it's mythological, and so Valhalla is where humans go, right? They go to Asgard. So these Vikings came from
mythology.
Earth,
stupid,
right? They came from Midgard.
This is stupid.
Okay, no, this is mythology, man.
This is stupid.
This is what works.
Hey, well, that's fine. So, but I'm here for Wonder Woman, and I'm getting a story where she doesn't remember who she is. And see, you're making me sound way more negative on this than I actually am. But
no. Because and this is how I took it, and I might be completely off. When they're going through, right, each rebirth or each time she dies and wakes up the next morning, she's losing a little piece of Diana. Mm-hmm. So as far as we don't know how long she's been going through this, right? Like she could have showed up there and was like, whoever pulled her there was like, hey, I need help, and then she got wrapped up in it, right? Because she's not technically Wonder Woman anymore in this round.
I actually don't get the impression she's been here before we start to see at the start of this issue, because she seems to remember things after each loop, after this first time we see her. And I think when she's warned that each time she dies, she's losing a bit more of herself. That's just the start of the process, because it's like, okay, so the potential for her things to get worse as she keeps dying and looping.
right, but you're talking about. I'm trying to ease your, her not remembering who she is, and maybe we've done this type of stuff before. I'm just saying maybe it could be revealed that we're coming at her in the middle of this at this point.
Maybe.
I don't know, but as someone that loves Norse mythology and likes Wonder Woman, merging of the two is something that I think is pretty. I don't want to say bold because it's not.
I
Bold,
guess.
but it's something I haven't seen before, right? And so to see their version of Thor show up here, like murdering a troll, like that's directly from the mythos. This isn't Marvel's Thor that we're all so used to now. This is a very, from the stories.
I think it's a two-sided thing. One is that I've seen the character doesn't quite remember who they are. They have to re-find themselves done enough times that I'm just kind of bored by it. And two, one of the things that we all said after coming towards the end of Future State is we were excited for books to not be this weird future thing anymore and to be back to continuity. And this is very much not back to Wonder Woman continuity in the DCU. This is still a very separate thing.
But we knew that based off of the end of Metal because of her choice.
No, we didn't know that. But I'm still less excited by it. This was always kind of the weird book. I'm like, why does Wonder Woman even have an ongoing book right now when she's not supposed to technically exist?
Right. So you're bringing that in.
Yeah.
And I get that.
Well, yeah, no.
Whereas I feel like I'm just here for the ride.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that this issue's goal was to sell me on the concept of whatever this book was going to be for the next while. Mm-hmm. And I think the quality is pretty solid, but conceptually it didn't really sell me because I'm like, this.
And here I'm in more than ever. It's exactly what I wanted it to be.
Honestly,
I think it just comes down to taste, right? I think it's just like I'm okay with the story being what it is, just because of, what I'm okay with. Whereas you wanted that kind of, you'd rather not have a Wonder Woman story if it was going to be this, right? Like,
I'd be fine with this.
Almost a run back.
If this was a mini. There was just someone's doing some weird Wonder Woman tangent thing where they wanted to put her into all this mythology stuff. Great. This being the main Wonder Woman book is kind of like, I don't know. I hate to be a dad because there's things in the book I like. I love the tease at one point where she's like the narration is saying that she's going to meet the biggest baddest thing in the land, and she's looking out at these giants in the distance, and then the squirrel's like, no, not them, me. Which, by the way, almost like a meta point, like the squirrel was kind of implying that it could hear the narration in a weird way.
Yeah. Well, because if we're believing everything about Rorschach, it is the messenger that goes between the realms. So of course, if it can go between the realms, that means it's kind of an extra dimensional entity. So, I'm not quite sure if it's going to go the meta vibe of that all, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I just think that conceptually this is not what I want the ongoing book of any of the superheroes to be. So, and I knew you'd be seduced. You'd be seduced with Asgard, and you'd be seduced with Vikings, and
but even if this was like Egyptian mythology, which I know next to nothing about, I still think I would enjoy it just because I do have that. I like mythologies. I like the different cultural takes on the same ideas and whatnot, and so. But yeah, Vikings is just the cherry on the sundae.
It's like an episode of a TV show where the main character wakes up in some sort of weird place, and they don't know why they're there, and they spend the episode trying to figure out. But at least in a TV show, if it doesn't work, then it's over by the end of the episode. With a comic book, we've got at least 6 issues, and my concern is that we're going to be going through multiple different realms, doing the same kind of shtick for several arcs before we finally get to whatever.
I'd say I don't necessarily know that. I don't think it's going to be the same shtick. Okay. I feel like her not remembering is going to be a Valhalla thing, and then when she ends up going to whatever else is in the sphere of the gods, because who knows who else is what lies in there. We could get, if we want to play with mythos, we could end up with Diana versus Cthulhu at one point. And that would be completely different than what this is. So if this keeps up over the next 2 issues, then yeah, I think you're justified in your worry. But again, I'm not going to tell you like, oh no, you're wrong, because again, it's for taste. And when I was reading this, first thing on Tuesday, I was like, I don't know if he's gonna like this. There's a lot of swords and sorcery kind of stuff going on.
That's not even my problem with it, though. My problem is just how tangential it feels.
But like, right. And so, and with the swords and sorcery, it's like
it feels.
It's just.
I mean, maybe they'll do something important for a character arc where she'll discover or learn something by the end. But it feels like we're doing some sort of weird, wacky side story with Wonder Woman because she's not allowed to be main continuity for a while. So it's not because they had this great idea, it's because she has to not be around because of the way, Infinite Frontier's going, because of the end of Death Metal. Like, she's not allowed to be involved for a while because of continuity. And because of that, they've had to come up with some weird thing. So, and maybe the weird thing will be fun for a lot of people, but it didn't come from a place of, no, this is a story we have to tell with Diana. It's no. Diana's not allowed to be here, so we have to come up with some sort of weird other thing for her book to do until she's allowed to be back properly.
I mean, that's kind of where Bruce was forever, right? With Falling Through Time. And you didn't like that.
Well, no, but that was a separate miniseries. I was enjoying the main Bat book at the time.
Right. Now I know what you're saying. But no, now that
Dickens Batman was great. I was living the high life during that era.
No, I know, but I'm talking about just the return of Bruce Wayne. I get how these are similar. Now, when you say that.
Yeah, that 6-issue miniseries, Return of Bruce Wayne, did not like it. Did not like that book.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, but that was there because Morrison was doing other stories without Bruce.
Yes.
So because of how Final Crisis.
Yes, this is Return of Diana, and it's not as bad as Return of Bruce Wayne as of yet, but conceptually,
I mean, that one did have caveman Batman, running around in that first issue. So
yeah, and it was tedious. It was tedious to get through. Just get to the point. God damn it! This is Return of Diana. It's not as bad as Return of Bruce Wayne as of yet. But conceptually, a lot of the reasons why I don't like those types of side stories where they don't know quite who they are and they're traveling through time. It's not that I don't love time travel, and it's not that I don't necessarily love characters being in new situations. But it's just I don't know. It's a trope that I'm just not, and it's see. This is the thing. All my feeling at the end of this issue was like, shrug. It was pretty decent for what it was, even though I'm not in love with the concept. Having to sit and talk about it has made me dislike it more. Because you're making me explain things. You're making me explain things, and it's going to be worse when Connor's here, because Connor's going to sit there and jack off into a cup as he's talking about this book. I know he is. I know what he's like. So, it's going to be that stupid King Arthur conversation from that Superman issue all over again.
Oh, just wait till I start talking about him off here with Once and Future.
I can enroll that. I don't have to chime in on that though. That's fine. I could just forget that exists. Yes. All right. What are you rating the main?
I'm giving this an 8. I like it. It's my
Here's the thing. I'm still giving it a 7. I think it's a perfectly solid told issue, with good art. It just conceptually, I'm not necessarily in love with the idea of that this is what the book's going to be for X number of issues. But I'm still in for now. Mm-hmm. We do have the backup as well, though, of course. As I race through it to get to the credits page, Jordi Belair writing with Paulina Ganacho on art. Apologies, I'm butchering your name.
Sure.
I will say I'm not a fan of the art in this backup.
I don't really like this story. You know how you're kind of like with the people falling through time?
Yes.
I'm just kind of over young Diana right now and all of the stuff on the island.
Sure.
And I get they want to show us the island.
Sure. I have to admit, see when Wonder Woman 84 came out, obviously that movie has so many more problems that are actually way more of an issue, but I do remember having this kind of groan at the start when it was a Themyscira flashback of going, oh, okay, I get it. Themyscira. Like, we always go back to Themyscira. It's like, it's overdone.
Yeah. And that's why, again, I bring up the Rucka run all the time, but to me, that's the iconic Wonder Woman. I like that he in Rebirth had made, like, Themyscira this unattainable place, right? Like, she couldn't go back, so you couldn't just constantly lean on it. And so I understand them wanting to go back and tell stories of her childhood, but I'm kind of like, I don't know. This is fine for like an all ages kind of book.
Yeah, it's Diana riding her
The Adventures of Young Diana.
Yeah, it's Diana riding.
But that's not my thing.
It's Diana riding her kangaroo you know, Jumper. You know, that's basically. I actually was shocked at the end when it said to be continued. I thought this was a one and done. I thought this was just a little 10-page romp of her riding their kangaroo. But Diana feels that she wants some responsibility. She doesn't just want to learn things anymore. She wants a purpose, and she's told at the end she's going to get to learn to be a storyteller. She's now going to tell the story of Themyscira. I will say this: when we come back to read the next issue of Wonder Woman, I will not be reading the continuation of this backup. I was not into this either, if I'm honest. I didn't hate it. Like, it didn't make me angry because, like you said, for something to hand like a small child, like to say hey to like a 7-year-old, this is a perfect little fun thing for them, but didn't do it for me.
Yeah, that's what I always talk about when people get so mad at the all ages line or the young, young readers line. It's like, well, they're not for you, like, and that's fine. So I'm not mad at it, but I didn't enjoy reading it. Just like I don't think I would enjoy reading some of that, young adult more featured stuff. And I think it comes down to a lot of the art too. I'm not a fan of this overly kind of cartoony.
I mean, I can sum it up in a phrase. I hate anime eyes.
You're not wrong. I'm along the same lines. I'm not a fan of that style of it. And but just like, it's cool they brought Jumpa back, because that's a weird golden agey element to Wonder Woman that we don't touch on too much. But yeah, it's just okay. If you liked it, cool. I'm glad you liked it. But like Pete just said, if this is the continuing backup for the next issue, then I'll probably just skim over it and,
Yes. What are you rating the backup?
I'm going to give this a 6.5.
I'll give it a 5. Nothing super low, just, straight down the middle, because it just really is not for me. It's unoffensive, though. There's nothing, like, upsetting about it by any means. So, book as a whole, Matt?
Let me do my math. I think it's a 7.
I give the main story a 7. So I'll go 6.5. I'll take off half the point for the backup. What's weird though is that when I read at the next issue and I don't read the backup, I'm not even going to acknowledge the backup when I'm considering my score. It'll just be whatever the main story is. Maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's how we're doing it. So that's how we're doing it. Cool. All right, The Joker issue 1. James Tynion the Fourth with Guillem March on art. Now the question that I have to ask first is, Matt, did you actually read this?
No. I told you I'm not. Guillem March and Joker.
Tell me you're not going to read a lot of things.
Yes, I know, like Suicide Squad, but then I surprised you. Curveball, 12-6.
That's
but this one,
the
no.
You chose.
I, as much as I am over young Diana, I don't want to see the Joker. The last 2 years, I am Jokered out. Like, so you tell me this. If I hear good things about James Gordon, maybe I'll pick it up and trade down the line.
I mean, it is. It's a James Gordon book through and through. There's a lot of references to year 1, because if you remember, that was very heavily James Gordon narrated that book.
Right.
He talks about his last night in Chicago before he came to Gotham. The opening's this story of, like, before he left, the old cop that worked there came up to him, because Gordon had put away a couple of crooked cops. Got a few of them fired and whatnot. And this old cop comes up, and at first, then Gordon sort of thought this too, the idea that, he's going to sort of speak up against me for putting, allies behind bars or ratting them out or whatever. But what he's actually trying to say, he asked Gordon if he believes in evil, and the old cop tells him this story of basically what keeps him up at night now. There's this crime where he was hunting a serial killer, and he got to a crime scene and the killer was there, and he was eating strips of skin off of this woman's face, and he offered him a strip of skin. And you don't see most of this, for the record. This is, it's mostly just him telling this.
Yeah, and that's almost worse sometimes, because you're left with it in your head, and this is Tynion doing horror. Right?
Yeah, there's one panel of, like, from behind, and you sort of see the guy crouched down next to this woman's body, but you don't see, like, actual strips of skin in his hand or anything like that. It's not that. But he basically says, do you believe in evil? And he talks about how, there's the law and then there's evil, and when you see evil, you aim for the head. And obviously, this is a prelude to the idea of what Jim now thinks of as the Joker. The idea that the Joker for Gordon is this evil, that he sometimes wakes up in the middle of the night and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of Killing Joke, where Joker's whole thing is everyone's just one bad day of turning into me, right?
So, we see Gordon, he's lying in bed, and like basically, other than the very, very last page, the Joker's presence in this book is just sort of the idea that his presence is felt, so that occasionally he'll be in the background watching over Gordon, but he's not literally there. It's just like in Gordon's mind, like the idea that he's Joker's weighing on his mind. And he talks about obviously what happened to his kids, both Babs and obviously James Gordon Jr. But so there's a lot of stuff connecting to the Infinite Frontier issue 0 with what they're calling A-Day, which is the death of Arkham Asylum, which is the Joker's toxin going off. And they do clarify a couple of things here. One, that it was a different strain that didn't cause any laughing. It just made them smile. So the idea was it was quiet. No one noticed it was happening until very late on.
Gotcha.
And he mentions the one heroic, guard who saved some nurses. He mentions that he turned them down for the police force a few times and maybe they misjudged him. That kind of thing. He doesn't really believe most of the deaths that have been reported because it's Gotham. The one he believes the least is Bane. But it does say here that presumed dead are Jeremiah Arkham and Jonathan Crane. Obviously, Crane's a nice tease for, Scarecrow stuff that's going on.
Batman.
So that's neat. A little detail I liked is that Santa Prisca's there's like graffiti art of Bane, like little Santa Prisca in Gotham is honoring his memory, which is a nice little touch.
Where did we see little Santa Prisca? That was the next Batman, right? The first issue.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Where they had the Banes running around. Was that the first time, or did King introduce that?
My memory's terrible. I mean, we've definitely heard it before because I recognized it when he said it, but I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. But I do like that. That's an area of Gotham.
Yeah,
and him, of course, him having a mural there because he's a local kind of legend in Santa Prisca.
Yeah. And there's a lot of continuity stuff here. Gordon has to go see the mayor at one point, and it's the same mayor with the eye patch that we've had in the other Gotham books. So there's a lot of editorial, connections going on between these books, which is really nice, and it helps that Tynion's also writing Batman, obviously. If nothing else. But they want his help with something, and Gordon's like, how about you just learn to trust Batman? And that basically ends the conversation. And obviously Gordon's still got a good relationship with Batman. But the main premise of this book, once it gets going, after all this establishing and world setting up of like where he is and what's been going on in Gotham, which I mostly quite liked, to be honest. I thought it was fairly well told. And it feels like a nice additional sort of book to Batman. It feels like a proper add-on to it. But when the plot really gets going, sort of in the back half of the book, a mysterious woman with blonde hair pulls up in a limo and asks for, a meeting with Gordon. And there's a big guy in a trench coat who, I'll be honest, like, I think it's a red herring, but it definitely looks like it's Bane in a trench coat and a hat with, like, a scarf on to hide who he is. So
that man cannot be inconspicuous. He's built like Brian
Cage. What's funny about it though, right? it looks like he did in Batman and Robin, the movie, when he's got the coat on and the hat and the glasses.
Oh no, that's never good.
I don't know.
When you compare it,
that's what it made me think of, and I'm sure it's intentional. Now, whoever it is, we do see around the glasses, he's clearly like either burned or scarred. So again, I think it's so obviously Bane shaped that it has to be a swerve. It has to be someone else. But all I could think as soon as he popped up was this is Bane. And maybe the scarring comes from like surviving the Joker toxin that you obviously get hit with. I don't know. But
his jaw was like hanging off.
Bane's not dead though. Bane's coming back. He's coming back.
I know, but like I'm trying to think of the scarring or if that, I don't. Yeah.
So, there's a lot of mystery elements here because she takes him to a mansion that she says it's a friend's mansion or a friend's family's mansion. She doesn't reveal who she is. She gives him like a first name to call. It was a weird name. Cressida is her name. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Cressida. Cressida.
Right. Cressida.
But she essentially says, here, there's a photo of Joker in Belize. This was just after the A-Day event. And she gives him all this intel about where Joker probably is, and essentially says, look, we want Joker taken out, we want him gone, and makes it very clear that they don't want him to be arrested, they want him to be killed, and that Gordon says he's not a hitman, but she's like, no, that's why you're the perfect person for this job, because of the personal things that have happened to you, because of who you are, you're the best person for this. We believe that you're better than hiring a hitman. And so, and she says, do you believe in evil, Jim? And obviously that ties back to that opening conversation in the prologue, and he says, yes, I do. So it's this idea that Gordon, like, maybe could cross the line and just straight up murder the Joker because he believes it's the right thing to do. The idea that there's something so monstrous like the Joker, like that serial killer, that old cop, and he hears actually towards the end of the issue that old cop, years later, committed suicide. He couldn't live with the horror that they found like case files, like he was trying to track down whoever it was, but they never found the guy. He got away, you know, all that kind of stuff. So really, really, you know, simple, interesting. And it gets to the end, and Joker's just in Belize, and he sort of laughs as he looks at the newspaper about the Arkham incident. You know,
I feel like Tynion's obsessed with putting him in tropical beachwear.
Yeah, he's
because
Hawaiian shirt, he's got a hat on, he's got the whole thing. So I've sort of summarized the book pretty significantly at this point. So I guess the question is that I actually like the book, and what do I think of things? It's not bad. It's actually I'm not necessarily sold on the ongoing plot of Gordon like hunting down Joker yet. I need to see what issue 2 is like with him actually tracking him down and what that's going to be. But it's a decent attempt of like being a Gordon book, sort of like following up a lot of the Gordon threads and like his opinion of Batman right now, his opinion of Gotham, his opinion of the Joker, and the idea that the Joker's this, you know, that he's in Seven and Joker's the serial killer that he's obsessed with finding. Like those ideas are pretty neat. I think Guillem March's art is probably the least offensive for most of this book that I've seen it be in a while. Not to say that I love it or anything, and there's definitely a couple of wonky pages, but because a lot of it's more kind of like subdued and it's people talking in the shadows, he's quite restrained and doesn't go as over the top with a lot of it.
You think that's because he had like a longer lead time?
Maybe because typically he was brought in to like rush out some double shipping books and like help keep up with that schedule. I wonder if having a longer time for a monthly series per issue is benefiting him a little bit.
Because I remember his art wasn't my thing, but I didn't think it was like totally terrible. And then some of those issues that we got earlier,
and Batman
was not good.
That's here. So, I would say I wouldn't say I'm in love with it, but there's certainly pages that I was thinking, you know what, this art's kind of fitting the tone for what the book's doing in terms of this darker serial killer stuff. You know, the one page where it truly goes wacky, but it's supposed to be wacky, is when Gordon's at James Gordon Jr.'s grave and there's like a giant mutated Joker like over the top of it, but it's supposed to be kind of, you know, wonky and surreal and otherworldly.
Well, things are nightmares, right? Like,
so it's kind of like, I like the vibe that it's going for. I think just ultimately March's like line work just isn't to my taste, but it's not like it's you know, it's not that page of Riddler with the spine. It's not you know, all those monstrosities that he had in that Batman run that we really, really hated. So, you know, maybe being on a monthly book is doing better for him. Like, you know, is there better picks and picks that are better to my taste? Absolutely, but it's definitely not the worst of them. I would say this is perfectly serviceable, if not in places suitable art. If not, you know, I wouldn't say good necessarily, but I'd say suitable art for what the book's doing. But certainly not a complete eyesore like it has been in the past.
That's good.
But yeah, no, I mean, I love a Gordon book. I mean, the truth is, it's a Gordon book, but calling it Jim Gordon issue 1 wasn't going to sell a lot of copies. Calling it Joker issue 1 does.
However, I would have sold one more because I probably would have picked it up if it was Jim Gordon number 1.
But how many other thousands of people would have not bought it?
I don't know.
Probably a lot. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a lot. I think this is a case of, no, they wanted to tell this Jim Gordon story about him hunting down the Joker, which is a really cool concept in theory, but calling it Gordon or calling it whatever else doesn't make it sell copies. Calling it Joker does. This is the same as calling it Batman and the Outsiders. Calling it the Outsiders doesn't sell copies.
as much as I get tired of Batman, I'm not as much because I'll still read Batman, but Joker, I've just again over the last 2 years.
Yeah,
oof.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it like a super like off the charts recommendation, but it's not. It's not. I'm not saying to avoid it either. If you're interested in the concept and you like Jim Gordon as a character, I don't think you're going to have at least with this issue. I mean, who knows? The story could go off the rails, but I mean, keep in mind it is Tynion who's writing that, who typically does a good job, and his Joker stuff as well has been typically solid. So it's not like I'm expecting it to go off the rails. It's just a question of how far does it push Jim Gordon, and if he is presented with the opportunity to kill the Joker, like what does he do in that moment? And I'm curious to see how Tynion wraps it up. So. Believe it or not, I am going to read issue 2 of Joker. I think this was a fine first issue.
Just based off of the story that you just said, it sounds good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it'll round into shape, and I'll have to go back and check it out.
Not perfect, but certainly a lot there to like. Obviously, we have the mystery of who this mysterious Curseda, whatever her name was. And who the Bane-looking dude is, and like who's hiring Jim in this case. Specifically, obviously, there's an implication that even the criminals of the world want Joker gone because he's just bad for business. But a lot to go on there.
As much as I liked War of Jokes and Riddles, I always felt like Bane is a better counterpoint to Joker because he's so similar to Batman. So if this ends up setting up a feud between Bane and Joker, I'm kind of here for that.
That said, though, I expect it not to be Bane and Bane.
Yeah.
So that said, though, Bane is mentioned a lot when they talk about his mural and stuff. So maybe it is foreshadowing that Bane will be involved in some way.
Or maybe it's the spirit of Bane, and that Bane's gone, but it's gonna pass on to someone else. Kind of who crawled up out of Little Santa Prisca. No, I mean. Why not have a Bane that's from Gotham?
It was the way you said that was as if his spirit's literally going to another body. No, you just mean the mantle. Someone takes up the mantle.
Yeah, the mantle of him. But because I do love his origin that that he was in prison because of his dad, and the whole sins of the father paid upon the son, and that whole idea, and that's what he rose up out of that and became this guy. So the idea that you could have someone rise out of Little Santa Prisca in Gotham, I kind of like that. That's and who knows? That's probably not what they're gonna do, but now it's out there and something I want to see.
No, there's things to like here. I think if you're a fan of like more books in a corner of the universe, in this case Gotham, that feel like they're all connected and they're all feeding off each other. So I'm going to give the main story here a 7. I like. It's funny because I think conceptually I'm more into this than the Wonder Woman book. Although the Wonder Woman book obviously had much better art and other things going for it, but But yes, so yeah, I'm not against it. It's an interesting tactic to take, and I like Gordon getting the spotlight. The backup story, which this does have, I'd forgotten this had one because I misjudged how long it was going to take me to read my books this week because there's so many goddamn backups. So this is a Punchline story, following on from the Punchline special. This is Sam Johns and James Tynion IV writing, with art by Mirka Andolfo. So the art's pretty solid, as you'd expect.
Ooh, I did not realize Andolfo was doing the art.
So the whole idea is that Punchline's court case is going on, and we knew from before that she was sort of amassing a cult following who were kind of speaking out on her behalf, and she was pleading not guilty. Leslie Tompkins is there, Harper Rowe's there, and basically one of the witnesses, the key witnesses against Punchline, has been killed, turned up dead in the river, as is Gotham's way.
Oh no.
And basically Leslie thinks that there may be a lot of good dirt on her, because she's not always been Punchline. There was a time before she was Punchline where she was just doing stuff on campus. She was using public library computers. There was people there that maybe like talk about who she was before she became Punchline and get some dirt on her that way. So she sends Harper, but everyone knows that Harper's working for Leslie, so she says that it'd be better if Bluebird went. So it sets up that she's going to be going and investigating as Bluebird.
Oh man,
you're into this. You want it.
I didn't want to read Punchline because I'm like, yeah. But you throw Harper in there, and she's been so underutilized. Yep. Like
that's the thing. The main story is a Jim Gordon story. The backup is, I mean, I'd say it's maybe more of a Punchline story than the main story is a Joker story, but it's definitely also a Harper Rowe story.
Well, and this has Mirka Andolfo art, so I wouldn't even have to struggle through. Oh man. Maybe my shop will just let me read it when it comes out in the store.
Maybe.
Oh man.
Yeah, just just have a big sign saying I'm vaccinated. Let me stand here and read, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we see Punchline in prison. There's a playing card, an ace of spades is left on her bed, and she's like, "What the hell is this?" And her cellmate's like, "Oh, that's the Queen of Spades." And I was thinking a Huntress from Future State, because I mean I was Queen of Clubs, I think, but that kind of idea. I was like, no, this is like basically she expects a tribute, well, you know, maybe a snack that you've got, some, you know, whatever, so anything you can give her. And she's like, "Are you serious?" Like, I'm not. Where is she? Where is this bitch? And she walks down to her cell, and this, you know, Queen of Spades acts all tough and is like, "No, you're gonna give me whatever I want." And she's like, "You know why they call me Punchline?" As she's got her fist coming towards the camera, and knocks her ass out, and her henchwomen are just kind of standing there. I don't think I want to get involved in this. And Punchline's got her blood all over her fists, and she's sort of wiping blood off her nose as she's smiling. And that's all we get of her in prison. The other stuff is Harper. This was something that was set up in the special, is that her brother is like falling in with a bad crowd who support Punchline, because one of the guys is like sort of flirting with him, and he's sort of, you know, she's like, "Hey, I'm going to be gone for a few days. You know, can you not bring any of your new friends over to the apartment?" And it's like, yeah, leave me alone, stop babysitting me. So they've got a conflict. But you know, so that's one of the things I liked about that Punchline special, is it did feel like it was setting up a lot of plot beats that clearly was, you know, and it was leading to this backup story that they're going to be doing. So the last page of the issue is like Harper, after this sort of, you know, bittersweet interaction with her brother that's made her worried. She goes to her bike, opens her little pouch, and there's the masks in there, her bluebird mask, and it's like, okay, it's time to go and investigate. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a solid. This was one of the few backups this week where I felt like, nah, I kind of wish it was just a full 20-page story. It feels like it does kind of end just after, like, you know, half of a story, but that's maybe a good sign in the sense that I like it and I want to read more of it. So, I like, and like you said, I'm happy Harper is getting some spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nice, actually. It's nice that we can maybe, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be Nemesis style thing, but like I'm okay with Punchline kind of turning into Harper Rose Nemesis. That'd be kind of cool of her to have that as a thing.
And as long as Punchline stays a villain.
Oh sure.
Right? Like we have Harley on the straight and narrow. You know, I don't want her to become an anti-hero.
Oh no, I think I think that's the beauty of the meta narrative that's going on here, is that Punchline's presenting herself as a anti-hero to her fan base, but we know that she's really just a horrible, manipulative person.
Right. Right.
So that's neat. And yeah, the art's obviously much better than the main story. Andolfo's art is really solid. And it's funny because people said, I said I hate anime eyes in the Wonder Woman backup review, and some may accuse Andolfo of having, and I guess I shouldn't say I hate anime eyes. I hate a certain type of anime eyes is maybe more accurate.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because there are a little anime here too, but there are different. I guess what I'm saying is anime has more than one style, even though there's a kind of umbrella.
There's a line, yeah. There's a line. You kind of know it. You know it when you see it, because Yes,
absolutely. So no, not a whole lot of advancement, but a lot of setup in this backup story, and I was into it. So it's kind of weird to rate these, because on the one hand, I'm like, well, if this was a full issue's worth, I'd be like, it's probably just a 7 because I didn't feel like I got enough advancement. But it's also only 10 pages, so how do I rate it? Like, should I criticize it for not advancing enough? I'm not sure. So I'm going to go 7.5 in this case. But I dug it. I'm looking forward to more of this. That should be a nice treat at the end of each Joker issue. So I was a 7.5. I'll give the whole thing a 7.5 as a whole. I think ultimately it kind of rounds up to being better than I think we'd expect. And I get that a lot of people are cynical about there being a Joker book, but conceptually it's interesting, and it's really a Jim Gordon book. So
you can take that knife out. I get
it. So there you go. That's Joker issue 1. It's not half bad, honestly. So, but hey, Batman Urban Legends issue 1, our new anthology book, all 70 pages of it. So this is 2 full-size stories and 2. I didn't count the pages, but they're about 10 each, I think. Just from
there's a lot. A lot of them feel longer than the others. Some of them feel shorter. So I'm sure there's differing page counts.
It was basically the first and last stories were the 20 pagers, and then the two in the middle were 10 each. Yeah. So the first one, and this is the thing. Obviously, it's the first issue, so I think we both read all of this, and going forward, issue 2, maybe we'd skip 1 or 2 if we didn't like 1 or 2 of the stories or whatever. But
yeah, so I definitely feel like some of them are going to be not every time. So like we know, like the Red Hood one, we know that's 6 issues worth, right?
Same with the Grifter one, which is 1 of 5.
And then the Grifter one as well. The 2 inside, I feel like they can shift. Like especially we'll talk about the Harley and Ivy one, but yeah. So I wasn't gonna read all of these, and then I started seeing what they were, and like I don't want another Red Hood story, but Zdarsky's been good, so I took a chance on it.
And it was really good, is what you're gonna say.
It was. I hate it. Again, this goes into there's no such thing as bad characters.
Yes.
Right? Just bad takes. And man, I don't like that they're making me like Jason.
Yeah,
between Tom Taylor and now Chip Zdarsky.
Tom Taylor, the Future State stuff, and now Chip Zdarsky, because it's Chip Zdarsky.
And Williamson.
And let me just read so Chip Zdarsky's writing this. Eddie Barrows and Bear Ferreira are the artists. This is called Cheer. This Red Hood 6-part story. So Zdarsky, I've loved what I've read of his Daredevil. And there's definitely some shades of that in here. Now, I wasn't necessarily in love with this story at first. It was like, okay, so Red Hood's tracking down some dude. There's some new drug on the streets of Gotham called Cheer Drops. And he's hunting it down. He's using rubber bullets because he knows that if he uses real bullets in Gotham, that Batman's going to come. It's not that he's made a deal with Batman. He just knows that this will keep Batman off his back.
That's what I love the most, right? So, like, I like when Red Hood is, like, when he was first introduced by Judd Winnick, or reintroduced, you could say, he was kind of like DC's Punisher. But it was almost like to spite Batman. Like, he was like, oh, you failed me, so now I'm going to fail you. And I like here that it's more of a bother. Where he's like, yeah, I could just ice these dudes, but then I'm going to have Batman on my back, and I don't feel like it. So I do love that wrinkle, and I could feel that intent. And he didn't even have to say it, right? You just kind of get the vibe from it.
Yeah.
Man, Zdarsky, he was a good artist. He's really shaping into a really great writer.
Yeah, because obviously there's nothing special about the opening few pages, and then you get like a flashback to Jason being a little shit and not wanting to train and being kind of like obsessed with the gun closet that Batman has, which obviously he says, why do you have all these guns? He's like, well, because I have to understand how to disarm people. I have to understand how to do forensics on them. There's reasons for me to understand and know guns that isn't using them.
Well, and I don't think you mentioned it. The flashback is done. It's Marcus.
Different artist.
Is a different artist, and the art styles match perfectly, right? Like they complement each other well. Where you have Barrows, which is kind of a little bit darker and stuff, and the flashback, a lot more clean lines, and it's almost reminiscent of a simpler time.
Yeah, because this might be harking back to these earlier Jason Todd years.
Yeah.
And obviously Batman's investigating some of these. There's one of the guys on the drugs. Essentially, is at the edge of a roof, and the police try to talk him down.
Yeah. So you find out that the drug is a spinoff of almost of the fear gas, except it does the opposite, where it kind of makes you all
too happy,
almost kind of like
too,
like Black Mercy, right? Where it kind of gives you what you want to see, but it makes you hallucinate, and it can put you into some real bad situations. And that's where we see Batman save this dude who kind of swan dives off the top of a building.
Yeah, it was because obviously Jason says this. He says that people are getting into like trouble because they're walking onto the road or they're getting into dangerous. But then we get this example of it with Batman, and it does a really good job of like establishing that this is in again the current day Gotham. Oracle is in this as well, where Jason calls Oracle for help with the situation that pops up. Where this actually got good, because it wasn't bad up to this point, it was perfectly fine.
No.
But where it kind of started to, obviously I loved Oracle being a part of it and talking to both Red Hood and Bruce. Where it got its heart, and where I went, Zdarsky, you son of a bitch, you're making me like this story enough that I have to read more of it, is when Jason comes across this kid, when he's tracking down where these drugs are coming from, and this little boy, his mother's OD'd on the drug, and it wasn't even this point yet. I mean, this works, don't get me wrong, it works because his own mum OD'd, so he's being nice to this kid. He's looking after him. He's asking Oracle to track down the father, but the father's one of the people who are involved in making the drug, or at least distributing the drug. And he goes looking for him. And there's a scene where they're in the alleyway, and he gives because obviously the mouth part of his mask comes off, and he's just got the eye part, and he gives the kid the mouth part. He's like, "Hey, now you're a superhero too, so I need you to be a superhero and stay here." And he's like, "Can I pick my own superhero name?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can. Of course you can." He's like, "And by the way, if anything goes wrong, if anything comes up, just say Oracle, I need help." Right? Because obviously his communicator's on his mask. And he's like, "Cool, so you're going to be good?" And he's like, "Yeah, so what's your superhero name?" And he's like, "Well, what's yours?" And he's like, I'm the Red Hood." And he goes, "Well, I'm the Blue Hood then. I like blue." And I'm like,
yeah.
Do you know what? I hate how much, and because I think it's the art as well, because like Jason's like sort of smile, he's almost tearing up as he's looking down. I'm in the pouring rain. He's looking down at this kid. I'm like, oh god, you're making me like Jason, like someone like Joel from The Last of Us, or like any kind of anti-hero character who becomes kind of a begrudging father figure. Like, I'm like, no, Zarsky, no, don't make me like Jason, you prick.
This is not typical of a Jason story, right? This is something that I might see out of Dick Grayson, right? Swings in, picks up the kid, but we know from his history, like, that's not outside the realm. But with Jason, it's kind of like, oh yeah, of course he would try to shelter this kid because this is him.
And it just the idea that this kid is looking up, and even though he doesn't really know who he is before, that very quickly he's idolizing him. So to this kid, he's becoming the Batman to this kid. So this kid's like, I want to be Blue Hood. I want to be your sidekick. I want to be something that is inspired by you. So that this reaction from Jason feels very genuine. And I'm like, damn you, because it was this point in the book where this moment happens where I'm like, shit, this is actually really good. This isn't just fine, because up until this point it was perfectly fine and I was enjoying it well enough. Yeah. But this was the point where I'm like, damn it, this is actually really good.
For me, it's when he gave the mask to the kid and said, if you get into trouble, just say, Oracle, I need help. And it's just like he's giving the kid like agency in this, right? Like,
yeah, and the art is really, like when the next page when he's looking up at the building and the lightning is striking above, it's just the art is pretty gorgeous. Honestly, that's Eddie Bauer's art is really good. Yeah. And then he fights everyone, and he actually chases down the dad who runs. He hits him with the rubber bullet. The guy drops his gun, which is important. Because when the dad says, "Oh, I don't care if that kid lives or dies," he was a little leech. So was his mother. Sometimes I'd give him the drug just to keep him happy and off my back. And Jason, that's what makes Jason so angry at the end of this story is that he picks up his gun, which is obviously using real bullets, and shoots him multiple times in the chest. And he does have a moment, of course, where he's like, "Oh God, what have I just done?" But the idea that we're ending this story with Jason going back to killing someone because he's upset him that much, because this guy's a turd. This guy's so vile.
Yeah, no one's gonna miss him.
But it's the idea of, okay, because we kind of glossed over that Batman has a conversation with Oracle in the middle of the issue that he's not happy that Jason's investigating this because Jason's a killer and I'm not really excited about working with him. But and the fact that we even end this issue, the panel of Jason on his knees next to this dead body, I can't help but notice that it's in an alleyway, it's raining, and it's very reminiscent of the Wayne murders, the way he's sitting there. He's effectively just Joe Chilled this guy's dad, even though sure we know that this kid's parents were shitty and he's arguably better off without them in a lot of ways, but.
Yeah, but you don't get the vibe that the kid thinks the dad's a bad dad.
Sure, yeah, of course.
Right? Because he's just like, oh, I know where my dad works. And yeah, so and then to see what the dad says, and you're just like, oh man. Yeah. So, and then when he says that he gave him the thing just to keep him out of his hair. I don't know, this dude's gotta be dropped off a roof.
Yeah. This was the perfect type of story to tell with Jason, and then it makes him sympathetic. But he does go that one step further, which is both cathartic for us because we completely sympathize with why he does this, but also because it is Batman's world and we know that killing's over this line, and he feels that he's done that immediately. So this is the perfect kind of what's Batman going to do when he finds out about this? You imagine protecting this kid's going to be a big part of this arc. I hate how good this was.
Yeah, I know. Damn it, Zdarsky.
Oh.
How dare you.
Zdarsky, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. It's really funny
Yeah.
right now that Taylor's going to be on Nightwing. Red Hood's getting good stories. Damien's got a new book by Williamson.
No,
Just Tim's
but
in the
after
ether.
after all these years of like we had King on Batman and kind of like everything kind of had to stem from that, and like Batgirl was kind of inconsistent, and Nightwing was fine up until they made that really bad decision. Tim wasn't kind of anywhere to be found. I'm enjoying the fact that Gotham feels like it's all taking place in the same spot.
Yes.
Like this very much feels like, not just because Oracle's there, but there is some consistency finally to that neck. And I don't know if that's editorial. I don't know if that's just, Tynion setting things up right in his book or whatever it is.
I just wonder, I wonder if under the old regime there was too many blocks for things that stopped a lot of, coherent collaboration between books and editorial teams and whatever. Because we heard a lot of horror stories of, I think it was Mercad Scott who wasn't invited to the Bat Family meeting of writers. Like, wait, she's writing Batgirl. Why is she not at that meeting, like talking about, keeping everything in sync with each other? I don't know.
Right. And so like, and this is where like, this is the type of continuity that I like. Like, you don't have to read everything, right? But the fact like Oracle's popping up here and then she's filling the same role she did last week in Batman, where she feels like she's part of this.
It feels like a breathing world. Yeah. And it's that thing where even if you only read the books that you think are good enough for you to read, the fact that there's still going to be some stuff sprinkled in it, you don't feel bad that you've missed some sprinklings in other books, but if you do read them and you do like them, you're going to be excited by the fact that everything is feeling like a part of a living, breathing world that all links and connects and whatnot. But no, I think this tying into Jason's unsheltered trauma, him being sympathetic with this kid, the ending being the perfect kind of he's went too far. But we're bizarrely, this puts us in a place where when Batman comes after him for doing this, we're kind of going to be rooting for him to like sort of prove to Batman that, like, okay, Killian's wrong, sure, but like maybe let's not overreact here, or I don't know. But anyway,
right? He fell and the gun went off.
And Batman knows he's. Batman knows he's tracking down this drug, so he's already got. So even if he comes to this crime scene, there's going to be a connection with Jason before he's even started looking at anything. So a lot going on there. What are you rating this story?
I'm giving this an 8.5.
Yeah, I have to agree with 8.5, which is notably the highest thing I've rated so far this week, which is shocking. Shocking. Zarsky, you son of a bitch. Get Zarsky on a full-time DC contract, please. If he can do this for Red Hood, he can do wonders for anyone.
He also did a Jimmy story that was really good too. So like, it's not just the dark kind of Daredevil-y things like you said, but there was that Jimmy Olsen story was real good too.
Yeah. All right. So the next story was the Harley and Ivy story, which was Harley remembering their first sort of date and time together, stealing stuff from the Iceberg Lounge, bonding over plants, and she's back in their lair in present day though, being kind of miserable that Ivy's gone and looking at the old photos and basically missing her, and that's kind of it. So that's basically the whole thing. But you do get to see them flirt, and you get to see them kiss and say I love you for the first time. It's basically a romance.
Yeah, and just the whole idea, like the plant represented their relationship, and like she finds it again later, and they're different people now, but like it can still be nursed back. Like there's still that promise of it'll be okay. And like the Laura Braga art is just, I think it fits really well with this small story. And then the reason I want to talk about
hold on
this
a second, just to, Stephanie Phillips is also writing it, just since you mentioned the artist.
That's what I was going to say. Stephanie Phillips doing Harley, and yet I see the ad for the art in Harley, and like I really liked this story. I thought the voice for Harley it's where I enjoy Harley, and then I look over and this kind of makes me upset because I think I would enjoy Stephanie Phillips Harley, but I'm not going to read it because the art, So
I had a bit of a stupid moment at the end of this because it says to be continued in the pages of Harley Quinn and Batman, and I went, they've not announced a Harley Quinn and Batman book.
Yeah, yeah. And since I caught up in Catwoman, I kind of know what Ivy's going to be up to.
Sure. Yeah.
So talking about that sense of a linked world, there's that at play as well. And we saw Harley last week in Batman.
I mean,
Harley's keep up, jumping on the rooftops.
Harley's been a staple in Batman for a while, and I've been enjoying her inclusion in Batman for the most part. So that's cool. So this is just a one and done. So this will have a different. This will be replaced next time with another 10-page story
by something else.
Yeah.
But no, I really enjoyed the story. It was a nice, simple, just kind of Harley reminiscing, and nice imagery. So yeah.
What are you giving it?
I'm gonna give this a 7.5.
Yeah. I don't know what to give that, because I thought it was perfectly fine. I'm not maybe as invested into the Harley Ivy relationship as other people are, but there's certainly nothing wrong with it. I'll just go with a straight 7. It was just good. I have no passion for it, but I have nothing to really complain about. So 7 out of 10 is kind of where I fall on that. Next story is the first part of a 3-part Outsider story. And Black Lightning is trapped somewhere in a tower, but he's talking to Metamorpho as if Metamorpho's in another cell, which is notable because the reveal at the end of the story, of course, is that the entire tower is Metamorpho, which is a neat twist. I think
this is not my Outsiders I tend to enjoy. These are the characters, but this was just I don't know, it felt weird.
You went into this? You enjoy this one?
I don't say I didn't enjoy it. I'm gonna finish reading the story, but I guess I'm just so used to the Outsiders that we've been getting. That was that Brian Hill, ruggedness. This definitely feels like the Outsiders from the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, they're fighting ninjas on jet skis, right, and boats.
They are. That's when we flash back to the afternoon. We get them on jet skis. And there's some good action here. Lightning's stopping poisonous arrows. At one point, Katana does it as well with her blade, and it's all just kind of fighting. Metamorpho's coming after them. It sounds like Katana gets taken off to fight an army by herself. And the end of the story is Jefferson saying, "Hey, are you ready to regain control?" And he sort of blasts lightning through the building to wake up Metamorpho.
Right.
So the final page is this full-page spread of the building with a mouth and eyes kind of screaming as the lightning's coming through it. He's like, "Wake up!" So we can give them payback. So just for the record, this is Brandon Thomas writing with Max Dunbar on the art.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. I don't want to kill it for not being what I was expecting for Outsiders, because I was not expecting Metamorpho building and Black Lightning trapped inside. In a prison fashion. So I'm gonna check it back out, but it was just it was weird. Was not expecting this type of story for Outsiders.
I mean, it's still Katana and Black Lightning, which has kind of been the core thing. Certainly in the Future State story it was. So it felt like a slightly different thing, but it didn't feel that different to me. Obviously, the art and the action was so good in that Future State story that yes, this doesn't quite live up to that. I mean, I'll concede that. I mean, this is. But I think it was perfectly fine. I thought that final page was a lot of fun, and so I'm curious to see what the actual conflict is, because it kind of holds it back for now. So we'll see. But again, it's one of these weird things where it's hard to judge a 10-page story when it's part 1 of 3, because it's how much. This is why talking about the digital books is so tough when they only do the 10, which is why we're waiting for the full physical issues before we're talking about it.
Yeah.
What are you rating this?
I'll give this a 7. It's fine.
I'll also give it a 7. If I come out of these 10-page stories with 7s, I'm fairly happy enough. It's when they start to dip lower into the more, this was a chore to read territory. So the final story in the book is the Grifter story, which starts with a flashback to him during this big fight in Midway City, where his brother's also there, and they're in this losing battle. People are dying around them. Eventually, the superheroes show up, and we see all these wishing lines go past, and like, oh, finally, we're saved. But it comes to present day, and he's hired as a bodyguard for Lucius Fox. And it starts off with, would you believe it, Grifter messing up because he sees 2 guys get out of a car, and he thinks, oh, these 2 look suspicious, so I'm going to take them on. and he gets into a fight, and it turns out that these are actually just more bodyguards for the guy that Lucius is meeting. They just didn't come in the helicopter with him.
Yeah. Who's the prime minister of a country, right? Or a foreign minister of some kind, and then Grifter tackles him into the pool.
Kurlenko is the name of the minister, Prime Minister Kurlenko. I can't say that properly.
There you go.
But there's a joke here where he's like, "Hey, if I messed up this deal, dock my pay for the losses." And Lucius is like, "It was $1.3 billion." You're right. You're right. Speaking of things messing up. But he spits out his drink. It's a glorious moment. So we'll start a payment plan.
You start a payment plan. That's what I was trying to say when my mic went rogue. I'll say this: Rosenberg has I don't like Grifter as a character. Right? He hasn't won me over yet. However, the dialogue that he has with anytime him and Lucius are together, because they're such an odd couple, it's spot on. And maybe over the course of these 6 issues of the story, he'll win me over. But through what was he in Dark Detective? For 2 issues of that
was.
And this, so far not so much, but I did get a good laugh out of that, and just
I also
just his total vibe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic case of like, I think we're enjoying this because of the writer's voice rather than because the character's someone that we latch onto.
Yeah.
And if it's still the case at the end that that's how we feel, then that's fine. But she also mentioned that he's talking to someone on comms earlier on, when he's going to tackle the guards. There's someone making fun of him over the comms, talking about how, no ladies want to be with him, and he's the best at what he does, except Deathstroke and Shiva, and lists a few other assassins.
Cheshire.
I got a chuckle out of that. We don't actually get a reveal for who he's talking to by the end of the issue, but it's obviously an ongoing mystery. But we do get him going to see Penguin. There's a funny little page where the guards like disarming him, and he's got like a bunch of different like tiny weapons, including a grenade on him, and he's kind of reacting as the guards getting more and more annoyed at him. But Nora Freeze is at this meeting.
Weird.
Yeah, I think we heard a while ago that she was going to be around. Like she was up and she was going to be a feature of some kind. But they have whatever meeting they have. We don't really get to see the ending of it, but I mean, the voice on the comms is definitely it's not definitely a woman necessarily, but I don't think Grifter's bisexual or gay or whatever. So I assume it's a woman because they say they're horny when they're asking Grifter to come over. But Batman comes up for a fight. One thing I do kind of dig about Grifter so far in Rosenberg's voice is the idea that he's kind of a screw up, and as he's fighting Batman, he keeps thinking he's got the upper hand, but he keeps just getting the shit beat out of him, and it's kind of amusing.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Clint Barton.
A little tiny bit. He's kind of that screw up lead character who keeps thinking he's in over his head, but he does actually steal a badge when he's there to protect Lucius Fox. He sort of like he gets told to take the afternoon off because he's been useless. What a shock. And he's going to snoop around in the private computers, and then the end of the issue is Batman and Nightwing have been called to a crime scene where the body of Nora Freeze is in the water. Which, first of all, Mr. Freeze is not going to be delighted when he hears about this. See,
not at all.
Especially, wasn't Mr. Freeze one of the guys in that opening battle scene firing off his freeze gun? I feel like I remember that being a thing. I will say this ending was like so out of nowhere. I was like, wait, this is going to be a murder mystery about who killed Nora Freeze? What now?
Maybe.
I was not expecting that. But I'm curious. They've got me curious. That's snooping.
I'm looking for Freeze. Yeah, he's in there.
I thought I saw him.
Years ago. So
curious.
But yeah.
Curious. She was kept alive in a tank for so long. She's been murdered, seemingly. I mean, and of course we never saw the ending of that meeting with Penguin, so we don't know how that ended. It didn't seem like he just murdered someone when he walked out of it, but yeah. It just kind of ends in a cliffhanger, where Penguin brings up the name Merlot, and Grifter grabs a gun from one of the guards or from Penguin himself, whoever it is, and it ends in a kind of a standoff, and then it just cuts to him sort of leaving the building. So we don't actually know, and obviously I think that's intentionally vague so that we think, oh, maybe he did murder Nora Freeze. Obviously, I don't think he actually did, but...
Well, I'm trying to look up how she came back to life.
It didn't
to see if maybe this is just a red herring.
Well, that's the thing. This didn't surprise me. This definitely came up at some point. I don't know if it was in a book that we read or it was just in the news that Nora Freeze was like up and around, but it definitely came up.
So it says in the Rebirth, it says Nora from New 52 had been retconned, so they got rid of that whole thing where they weren't actually married. He was just obsessive. Similar to the animated series. She was a talented ballerina, discovered she had an incurable disease. So several years later, after the events of Year of the Villain, Luther gives Mr. Freeze a vial that would cure her and furthermore revive his frozen wife. Mr. Freeze had to kidnap several women, modifying their DNA to hers in order to experiment with the vial. And wasn't that the story with Bruce, where he ended up in the
court?
The
he was in the trial. Yeah,
right.
It was
That's what
12 Angry Men starring Batman. Yes.
Right, and says in the end it worked, and his wife came back. She soon took up the name of Mrs. Freeze.
Yeah, it didn't surprise me when we saw her. I was like, oh yeah, I'd forgotten she was up and around there, but it didn't surprise me.
Right, Detective 1014.
Yeah,
is where that happened. That was Tomasi. So
we probably didn't read the actual issue, but I remember hearing it because it didn't. Yeah, because when I saw her, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, but I didn't. It didn't shock me. I wasn't like, whoa, Nora Freeze is up and around.
Right.
Like it wasn't that. So I knew it was something that it happened. But yeah, okay, it was in Detective, which obviously we all dropped after that.
Right.
That first arc kind of fumbled and died. I'm excited to read Detective actually when it's out in a week or two, whatever it is. So, yeah. I mean, what did you feel about that Scripter story?
It's okay. Again, it's a lot on the voice of Rosenberg. I'm gonna check out the next one. So I'm not like Cole Cash is. It's almost the opposite of Yara Floor, where I'm like, yeah, give me all the Yara Floor I can get. Grifter, I'm kind of like, okay, it's Grifter. Almost, this could have been almost a Deathstroke story too. It'd
be a very different voice, but yeah, I mean, it could have been.
Yeah. But what I mean is, it's very similar to that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna keep checking it out though. They have me on this book that I didn't want to read, but by the strength of the stories.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We have like a legitimately surprisingly good story with Red Hood. We have this, which I think is also very solid, and because the voice is so strong, it's got the interesting murder mystery angle, and it's filling out more kind of Gotham-y stuff because it does still involve Batman a little bit, still involving Nightwing apparently by the end, a little touch. Oracle's popping up in some of the stories, being the voice and help over the comms, and you got the middle stories. It's really easy to be like, no, I'm going to keep reading this because it's at the end of an anthology where I'm already sold. If not in one of them being really good, so I'm going to have it anyway. But the idea that collectively they're worth reading because they're together. I don't think anything in this first issue was a dud. Maybe you weren't necessarily in love with everything, but I don't think anything was like a detractor to it.
No.
What were you rating this issue or this story?
This story? I'm gonna give this story an. I do like the art. The art's pretty good. I'll give this a 7.5, 8. I'll give it an 8.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it an 8. I think the voice that that Rosenberg has here. I think it's actually kind of funny that this book starts with Zdarsky and ends with Rosenberg because there were two writers that I kind of discovered in Marvel that are now doing DC work in some capacity. But I did appreciate that. In fact, I don't think it was, maybe it was in a Punchline, but someone mentioned Snyder University. I think it was Punchline.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, is that maybe a bit too soon to have Snyder be one of the names that we use for stuff?
Yeah. Well,
but
as long as it's Scott, not the other one, we're good.
Next week, Matt. Next week. Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself.
So one of the times I envy Connor because I'll have to be sober.
Yes. I gotta give that an 8 anyway. So, book as a whole, Urban Legends. I mean, I would say it was a fairly successful first issue. Proof of concept of like, hey, here's a collection of Gotham related things. going on.
Mhm.
I mean, I suppose technically the Outsider story was taking place nowhere near Gotham. It was in Japan, but
Yeah, but they're all Gotham centric, you know. So sure, close enough, right?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Jefferson isn't really Katana. I wouldn't say is really Metamorpho. I would say is really. In fact, I would say that none of them. I mean, if Cass was there, or if Duke was there,
Yeah, close enough.
So what are we giving the book as a whole then?
I'll give the full book a 7.5. There's too much math, so I'm just gonna go with off my gut.
Let me see. I think I overall have to go. I have to go with an 8 overall. I think ultimately that first story was really good, and then everything else didn't really detract from it. If not was enjoyable. This Grifter story being kind of the second one in terms of quality, and then the two middle stories being solid enough. So
yeah, doing the math, if I remembered what I gave all the ratings to, it ends up averaging at 7.75. 7.5 is close enough.
Don't worry about the math. It's not about math, Matt. It's not about math.
Yes, I know, but I feel I have to be honest if we're doing these ratings. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rorschach, issue 6. Tom King writing, Jorge Fornes on the art. Obviously, we've been big fans of this book as it's been coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And this issue is more on how, the kid and the old man, how their relationship formed. Someone unknown to us delivers a package to the hotel where our main character is staying. And it's basically all the letters that these two characters wrote to each other. Will and I've forgotten her actual name.
Oh shoot,
Laura.
Laura.
Yeah, it only says "Dear Laura" like 8 times in this issue.
Yeah.
But so the structure of this issue is really quite straightforward because it'll be a letter from her to him, then a letter from him to her, and then there's like 3 or 4 like interludes where it cuts to our main character in the hotel. Getting the letters and then starting to investigate, okay, who actually dropped these off? Who had these? Like, how did they get a hold of them? Which leads to the big cliffhanger at the end of the book. And while he's doing that, on TV or the radio in the background in all of his scenes, the presidential debate between and Turley is going on. So it's seeped in all the stuff that it's been building up, but the core of the issue is these letters going back and forth between the characters. And at first, they're fairly straightforward. At first, she's like, I'm a fan of your work. It's connected to me. He's like, oh, it's always happy to hear. He's especially pleased that she's writing about not the main big not he smells like Teen Spirit. Yeah. She's writing about the hit B-side that no one else talks about.
Yeah. Well, yeah, which is very similar to Rorschach when we see the character show up.
Yeah, because
it's
the citizen and the unthinker, and the idea is that the citizen is the one who takes an interest in everything that's going on, and that's kind of like what her father was like. And then the unthinker, which kind of represents Will's father, the old man's father, because he was someone who would rather shut the window and ignore the screams in the alleyway, which is literally the example we get later on.
Right, and so there are these opposing forces that end up having similarities because of their upbringing, they end up doing the opposite. Now, not quite her, because she's more proactive. She does the opposite of what her dad wanted, right? But he goes and he wants to be more involved, and it's almost like, he created the pirate character as a version of himself that got to be more proactive, in that he was from this. He says in one of the letters, he came from a place of evil, but he was always good, and that's what he related to.
Yeah, but then he goes to resent it because it becomes this symbol of like him not actually doing anything. Especially when he starts seeing it on backpacks and lunchbox. It's just a commercial thing at a certain point. Which
the constant reminder of his
what he says sees as his own failures now, and that's why he gravitates towards the citizen and the unthinker as characters that are more representative of something that he wants to be. And it kind of over the course of these letters sets up how they connect. And we've spoken not the last issue, but the issue before about her looking for kind of the next Rorschach in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I kind of take some of these letters at face value. She seems kind of genuine in her sort of descriptions of who she is, and it doesn't feel like she's just trying to manipulate him in any way.
No, not at all. they don't seem it because it feels like when she initially reached out, she struck a nerve, and then that's what he wrote back, and they would get more in depth as they went on with their own histories
Yeah.
and how they can relate to each other, and they're almost like again, they're like a yin and a yang, right? They're two halves that equal a whole, and they complement each other really well. Which leads to whatever happened with them and the Turley,
I do think
assassination
I
attempt.
do think there's an irony here that the Unthinker is the one that looks kind of like Rorschach, but without the Rorschach mask. Is the Unthinker. I think that's kind of an interesting, like, irony, right?
Is that because I thought that was the citizen?
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that is the citizen.
I'm not too sure, but it does look like it looks like the question.
Do you know what I appreciate about it? Is that I appreciate that as he's talking about why he likes these characters and why he gravitates towards them over the Pontius Pirate, is that we've never really heard much about these characters. They've probably been mentioned briefly in this book before, but not to any great extent.
Yeah.
And I kind of loved it just from the context of how he talks about them. Like, I kind of get the point of them and kind of almost the satire they had in his creations. It's kind of like really well done in how it gets across that information.
Yeah. Well, and on the middle level where they talk about like the citizen who it represents that person that wants to do more, right? It's the opposite of how his dad was, right? He was the one that would go in there and make a change versus and what did they say about the Unthinker? To where, because she said she related to that. That's on the first page.
Yeah, because for her it was a lot about that she was kind of just fulfilling her dad's like desires for her rather than getting to be what she wanted herself.
Right. I'm trying to find the exact
she
one.
almost desired wanting to like kind of like shut off and not like be a part of it.
That's what it was.
Because one of the big letters, of course, is when she describes a dream that she had, like a waking dream where she dreams that she's in a church, which she's never been in. She's only seen them on TV.
Right.
But she's there with the citizen, and you're right, the citizen is the one that looks kind of like Rorschach.
Okay, that's what I thought.
She sees a Rorschach mask on the bench, and something about it made her happy, truly happy, and maybe this is a kind of a manipulation moment here. That's like almost planting the seed of like the citizen becoming Rorschach, and Rorschach being what the citizen's ultimately meant to be. Because ultimately these letters for him, especially when he gets to his like backstory, talking about how he would read stories. He'd read Frankenstein, which she goes out and reads, and she talks about how she's 19, which is the same age as Mary Shelley when she wrote Frankenstein.
Right.
But when he specifically gets to the whole thing where they'd hear screams like some woman was brutally murdered in their apartment building or just outside their apartment building, and they actually heard the screams, but his father went up and shut the window and said, "No, that's the city's problem. Society's
that's none of our business."
Actually, there's a moment here. There's a line that doesn't quite say we live in a society, but it kind of like talks around the idea of it, where that's kind of what his father's idea was. Is no, this is society's thing. Society forms this. Society does this. So then when he later uses that and talks about how, we are formed by society, it does almost feel like it's a good version of what like people use for the Joker movie in a weird way, like how we're developing his character into turning into what he becomes, which is this attempted assassin on the presidential candidate. It's interesting.
Well, and the idea that society creates things, right? So like they're talking about the waking dream, and that it came to Mary Shelley. That the whole idea, the short story that became Frankenstein, which is also called the Modern Prometheus, and basically that in trying to defeat death, right, he only created more death and destruction. It created this kind of cycle, and what here is that creation for both of them, for the kid and for Meyerson, the writer, like which of their creations is going to create more problem, going forward here? Is it that they try to assassinate Turley? Is it just her idea that the spirit of Rorschach lives in these random people, right? Or like the whole idea of the squids, can come back and attack and whatnot. It was just that beeline, once you get, or that through line, once you get to that.
I think
here.
another thing to mention about the Frankenstein, referencing that's been made here is that Frankenstein itself is about someone who creates something that turns into be a monster, although notably a sympathetic monster who isn't necessarily to blame for what they are. So I think that thematically ties into everything going on here, where, if they are created, if she's created by her father, if he's created by his father, they're not entirely to blame for what they've become necessarily. It's especially when you can.
However, they have agency.
Oh, they do. Yes.
Did you ever read the original Frankenstein?
I have done, actually. Yeah.
In school. Yeah. So you find out that in that version, it's not just this, the Boris Karloff monster, right? It actually can talk and has a name and has agency of itself that you can't just blame the creator on. He still makes those choices, and so that's here the parallels that are being drawn between all of them. Like, yeah, they were created, but they still chose to do this. And I think that's there.
And here, a big thing about the Frankenstein creation is that not only, it makes choices, but it was also never taught right from wrong. Even its own creator kind of shied away from it. His responsibilities as a father, essentially. And this story here has both of these characters, both learning the wrong mistakes and also trying to rebel against what their father wanted them to be. That's a driving force for both of them.
There's that layer too.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on with that comparison. Just the story of Frankenstein itself, and on top of the reference to her rating Frankenstein, which is the idea that she had this idea,
as a dream.
And now obviously Laura's having this idea now too. And it's not explicit. She doesn't specifically say, "Hey, you should become Rorschach," but she plants the seed of because he is kind of effectively the citizen was kind of like what he wishes he was. And then the idea of you mix Rorschach onto that, she's planting that seed. Either intentionally or unintentionally, I'm not sure at this point, but it's planted.
Right. Well, and just remember what he did with his neighbor, right? That whole story.
Well, I think, I'd love to actually go back and read that issue again and try and line up the timeline here. If how far was he into these letters when he did that? I think that's a very interesting thought process. And
just King again is killing it here with this type of stuff. And then on top of all that, you have all these layers on top of layers of the story. And then you look at the art, right? And we always go over how great Fornes is. But here there's two panels and they're kind of opposite. The one that gets me is the full page of her at the edge of that pool, right? In the sun. And it's all yellow and she's sitting there. And then contrasting that is where he starts talking about his visions when he was reading as a kid and getting lost in books, and Frankenstein's monster's there, in front of him. It's a small panel where that happens, where he can visualize what these ideas are, and it's is she doing the same thing there? We just don't see what exactly she's visualizing.
Hell, even technically that page right before he visualizes Frankenstein is the page where she has the daydream. So I think maybe it is showing that they both are visualizing things in a certain way. In fact, something you said there reminded me earlier on. I think it's the second letter when it's the two full page spreads where she's sitting at the edge of an empty pool. For her, that's the for one. Her letter, and then his is when he's back to us, and it's a full page spread of him walking down the street. I do think it's really simple, but the idea that she's young, so her life's ahead of us, so she's facing us. But in his page, because he's old and he's nearing the end of his days, that his life's behind him, so his back's to us. Again, it's simple little things like that. That just some thoughts went into it. It's really neat. There's a page later on where during one of the letters she tells him, she doesn't actually say what she did specifically, but she killed someone who this man was beating up his wife or something like that in a motel or whatever, and it's all in silhouette. You just see the only thing you see is her eyes, and the complete silhouette and the blood of the headshot when the gun actually goes off. But it's wonderful stuff. But then it turns into the pirate comic, right? That the very next page is more silhouette, but the silhouette for him is the pirate comic. He's never actually acted on the things he's wanted to do. He's only drawn about it in the comic. So I think that's a really interesting. If you go with the idea that he is inspired by her youth and her willingness to actually act on what she's doing, and that's what's giving him like energy, and it's inspiring him. I think comparing her actual act of like, you know, in her eyes, heroic violence to what he drew as heroic violence, and with a similar art style, is a really nuanced touch between them to like them.
Well, there's that, and I just now realized that the panel layouts are the exact same.
Oh, they are, yeah. Well, actually,
they're not mirrored, but it's, you know, 3 across the top, and they're all the same proportion, 4 in the middle, 2, and it's like that every time the letters that they mimic each other.
No, they are mirrored. I'm looking at them. It's like they're flipped, because you'll notice that on the so the page with her silhouettes, like at the bottom, the thick panel's on the right, but then you go to his page, it's switched and it's on the left. So it is actually like a mirrored image. So I read this digitally. I assume the physical book, they were side by side.
I'd have to look, because I read that this morning, and I got really lost up in the story that I just now realized that they were doing this. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to go back and grab the physical.
And again, the blood is red, you know, unlike the silhouette of everything else. So I get I love that touch that this is actually something she's really done, but for him this was just something he drew about. So that inspiration, and you know, then she says she tried to kill herself, but she didn't. She thought of writing to him instead. And he talks about how when he was miserable and he couldn't draw what he wanted when he was like working in a drawing shop, and he's like, I'm leaving all the detective stuff to the end. I'm just focusing on
No, I'm just, but no, I can't believe I didn't realize that this does the mirroring until right now. Like, it's, again, Fornes and King, like, just working together so well.
You know? And it's that thing. So you have the page of her driving off in the full page with her letter, and then the page of him staring at his wall from behind. But what I love
of all of his creations,
with all his creations, but it's mostly Pontius Pirate, right? I mean, there is a citizen, a couple of things in there, but it's a lot of Pontius Pirate. I love the idea that he's staring at that as he's writing to her, "Come and see me. I would like to find the monster." I mean, that line right there, "I would like to find the monster." The idea that, you know, Dr. Frankenstein found his monster, Mary Shelley found her monster. He would like to find the monster with her together, and actually do something about it. So there's this sense of longing, this sense of needing to feel like you're accomplishing something, and maybe that's part of the things that makes someone feel extreme, because they need to feel like they've got a purpose, and feel like that they've got a purpose in a grander scale like that, in a political sense or whatever, makes them feel like they are doing something important. It makes them feel better about their lives. So there's layers here. There's so much going on.
Layers on top of layers.
It's so good.
Like, again, this is a perfect, like, I don't say perfect, but like, it is a great sequel to Watchmen, while not trying to be, right? Like, yeah, man. So I looked up the Unthinker and the Citizen, and this was early on. This is in issue 2, where kind of the Unthinker could become anybody. And the Citizen, it was the Citizen's main, you know, they were rivals or arch nemesis or whatever it was. But because I was trying to remember what the Unthinker looked like, and I feel like we knew that the Citizen was the question kind of before, but it didn't land until here when we saw him. More
to go with the mirroring thing, when they actually get to meet each other, obviously it's intercutting with the other story, which we'll get to in a minute, but when she's like at the door waiting for an answer, and then he opens the door, they're on opposite sides of the page, so it mirrors even on the same page, and then until they actually see each other, and then of course they're one panel at the end when they hug. So beautifully laying out, and obviously that intercuts with the detective going to the apparent home of whoever's left him these letters, but there is obviously investigation throughout the book. He asks he bribes the guy at the security desk to let him see the security cameras to see who left these letters. He goes and finds out, where the valet parking was, what the guy's license plate is. He calls someone in, like, no, I need to know tonight, like, whose license plate is this? And it's all just him trying to get to whoever left these letters. And the cliffhanger at the end of the issue, as he's getting into this apartment, is whoever this is dressed as Rorschach, and they're sitting watching this presidential debate, which, again, we've been hearing this debate play. Every time we cut back to the detective, we've been hearing this debate play out throughout. Talking about a conservative revolution, that, Redford served 4 terms, 16 years, his time is up, all that stuff. I feel like there's probably so much political subtext to read into with all that dialogue that I can't even begin to scratch the surface of.
No, but it feels like typical American politics where they're calling each other out in the debate for these things, and then they're smoothing over. Oh no, what he's really meaning is this, and it feels very, like King almost could have pulled it straight from the debates this time and just, swapped out certain terms for things that fit here. So, but yeah, now I'm gonna have to go back and read I'm gonna have to find some more time, and go back and read through these and, like you said, line them up with stuff, because all the Unthinker and Citizen stuff happened in chapter 2, which is also the one about the apartment and the neighbors.
I think this is going to reread wonderfully, because there's going to be so many things that we spot on rereads with more context. And which, by the way, that's the other thing we have to mention. He's got a cassette tape, which the name Frank Miller is mentioned like several times. I don't think, and
Otto Bender. Reminder.
Yeah, don't think that didn't stick out to me.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
There's Frank Miller getting name dropped in there. Neat. No, this book, well, it's one of those things where every time I read an issue as well, like, I don't realize how much it's doing until I get to the end, or until I stop down and actually start talking about what it's achieving with its storytelling. And I think this issue is up there again.
Definitely. Well, I came into this one going like, I don't know if it was that, like it was their correspondence back and forth. But then as you start breaking it down,
yeah, because I think
you start to realize all the layers.
Because first, I think for the first half of the issue, the letters back and forth, I didn't find that exciting. I know that sounds like a weird thing to say.
No,
but they weren't really saying much that felt surprising or revealing anything about them. But the more it went and the more it built its story, it started to build a picture. And when it did start getting to them like opening up, I was like, oh no, I appreciate that it took the time to get to this point. I'm happy that it didn't just skip to this, because it gave us this natural progression and understanding of how the relationship developed. So no, I love it. And like just getting the context of like, him opening the envelope with all the letters as we've just started reading them, and we have this context for where, what they are, how he got them.
That Tom King guy can really write.
He really can.
Right? Like we give him grief over other things, but like when it's not like a continuity kind of defining type thing, I think he's at the peak of his.
Just give him minis till that time. I mean, he's done a Supergirl mini in a couple of months.
It's the background on my phone for the last week and a half, like since we got that image. So like,
this is wonderful. I like picking what I like more out of Rorschach, Mr. Miracle, and Strange Adventures when they're all done is going to be really tough, because they're all excelling in wonderful ways that are very different. But I feel like, I mean, I don't collect physical books ever, but I feel like, some people out there, unless obviously some people just won't like his work, and that's fair, but like some people out there are going to have just that collection of deluxe 12-issue hardcovers of all of his books, and he just keeps adding to them. Like, after Mr. Miracle was like, okay, that felt like a once in a lifetime like quality book. That was like his spectacle, and then Strange Adventures and then Rorschach overlapping it. Like, it's like these two both feel up to that par. They both feel up to that quality.
I'm gonna do two at one time, and then I'm gonna give Supergirl a sword. Like, all right. I mean, do whatever you want.
Strange Adventures might be done by Supergirl starting, or maybe just slightly overlap, because that's much later in this run. That may be done soon, but
yeah. What are we on? We were on issue 8
or 9, something in that range.
Yeah, because it was So
that'll just be finishing probably Supergirl starting, but it makes me excited, and clearly I think his books sell well enough, because I feel like they always do pretty solid. So, DC keep giving them like 8, 10, 12 issue minis and let them just go nuts. And for the most part, keep it out of continuity. It's fine. Although I think Supergirl technically is in continuity, but whatever. So it's out in space.
Well, that's fine. Yeah.
As long as she doesn't end up killing everyone by the end of the miniseries, I think we're fine.
We like when Kara goes into space.
Yes.
So it's fine. But yeah, so what are we rating this one?
That's a good question. I mean, we didn't mention the art too much on the silhouettes, but obviously the art is, you know.
Yeah, it's Fornes.
Yeah.
Like it's always good.
I mean, there's that page like with the inspectors driving to the house towards the end, and it does that thing where it's like the camera, again, quotation, air quotes, but it's like the camera is on the outside of the windshield, so you get the reflection of the lights, the night lights, on the window. Oh, it's just the atmosphere, and using things like silhouettes to tie two scenes together, is so good. Yeah, layouts, like obviously the mirroring thing, everything about it, just yeah. So yeah, what are you in it, man?
I'm gonna give this a 9. It's I came in, it was maybe like an 8, but the more that we dissect it, I kept getting bumped up. So yeah, I'm
gonna go with a 9 out of 10 as well. I was even tempted to go at 9.5, but I'll stick with the 9. I'll keep things in check just now. So there you go. That is Rorschach issue 6. We're only halfway through. There's another 6 issues of this.
So you remember there was that issue of Watchmen that where it was like a mirror, where it was symmetrical. I think in fact it was called Fearful Symmetry. Do we remember what issue that was?
Oh, I don't. I remember it being one of the issues. I don't remember what issue it is though.
Okay, let me see. Because if it's 6, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I mean, it could have been.
But it was called Fearful Symmetry, right?
That sounds right. I mean, it makes sense given the title.
Okay. Yeah. It doesn't say what issue.
If you just look at like the preview pages on Comixology for that issue, for issue 6, I mean, it should be obvious, right?
Yeah, no, I googled Fearful Symmetry and was like, this says chapter 5. So
issue 5.
Off by 1.
Well, hey, if it wasn't right for this story to have it issue 5, then I'm right. It doesn't need to shoehorn it in for the reference. No, I think I'm happy with that.
But if this is halfway through, right? Yeah. So if this is where the mirror happens, we'll see how that goes. So
yeah, I am.
Shoot, all right.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. So that'll wrap up the books, which will take us on to the section of the show where you pick your favorite stuff of the week, with our favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and top 5 books, of course. So yes, let's get into this. Matt, what was your panel / moment?
Oh man, this is tough because this week was full of them. I think I'll go from Superman, and it's that page where where's it at? I'm getting there. It's gonna be the page where John goes to his dad and tells him, like, he can't tell him what's gonna happen, but he knows what's gonna happen. That one really hit me.
Yeah. For me, I think this is tough because there's definitely a few things in Rorschach that it could be, because there's wonderful moments in that book. The way everything builds and intersects at the end is wonderful. The various silhouette pages, him finally saying he wants her to come see him, all good stuff. But I'm not picking that because I have to pick the Blue Hood. I hate it. I hate that I'm picking something from a Jason Todd story, but I need to pick the Blue Hood moment.
It's good though.
And it hurts, but there it is. Yeah. The Blue Hood, which is obviously going to be the title of this episode.
There you go.
It has to be.
I like blue.
All right, best cover of the week, Matt. What you rocking?
I'm gonna go with Rorschach. I do want to do the Wonder Woman because there's Viking and stuff, but Rorschach covers constantly.
I'm also going Rorschach, but I'm going with the variant, that Del Auto. It's Rorschach in the rain with his weird laser looking gun out.
Yep.
It is absolutely that's put a frame around it and put it on the wall. Good is how that looks. The lighting hitting his trench coat. Oh, it's beautiful. That's my pick. But honestly, it was actually kind of an easy choice for me this week. I wasn't necessarily completely in love with. There's not bad covers. Like Wonder Woman's variant solid, but
yeah, Superman 1, 2. Those are the ones that the wraparounds. But yeah.
Yep. What is your art of the week?
This one's tough because all the 3 main books that weren't anthologies, I thought the art was all strong in, but given what we just talked about the symmetry and the mirroring, I gotta give it to Rorschach.
Yeah,
like Travis Moore though, that was a close one for Wonder Woman because that book looks beautiful. But yeah, it's gonna be Fornes for Rorschach.
Yeah, well for me it's obviously Guillem March for Joker. So
yeah. You're only human.
No, it's Fornes. Jorge Fornes gets the win there. But there was a lot of good art throughout the week. So top 5 books then, Matt.
So number 1, Rorschach. Number 2, Superman. Number 3, Batman Urban Legends. Number 4, Wonder Woman. I think. Don't hold me to that. I don't remember at that point.
Yeah, for me, number 1 is Rorschach. Number 2 is surprisingly Batman Urban Legends. I was not expecting that, but that's where I'll put it. And then I'll put. I think I'll put. That's actually quite hard. I'd kind of a sort of swimming in sevens kind of feel to a lot of these books this week. I am going to go with Superman, then Joker, and then Wonder Woman in last place.
Oof.
Yeah, that's where I'm going things.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's my picks. All right, there you go. That's what came out this week. I can tell you right now that Connor probably hated Wonder Woman because he hates mythology. We all know that about Connor.
How dare you, sir? I can't stand for the slander for CR21.
And his favourite story of the week was obviously the Red Hood story. In fact, he's probably delighted that we're all praising a Red Hood story for once. He doesn't feel like he's alone anymore.
No, not at all.
I'm not afraid anymore.
It's a shame that he doesn't get to read this Red Hood and talk about it. He had to talk about the bad Red Hood forever.
There was an irony to the Red Hood story we read when he wasn't here is the one that was actually really good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amusing. All right, I'll tell everyone what's coming next week from DC Comics as this Infinite Frontier journey comes, and probably the most anticipated book of the month, which is Nightwing 78, the beginning of Tom Taylor's run on everyone's favorite Dick. So it comes back next week for Tom Taylor's Dick, because that's coming next week.
It's blue.
I could keep the jokes going, but we're moving on. We also have Justice League 59, which is the start of the Bendis run, which, by the way, someone's making Connor read from Patreon, so that's good news.
He should be happy, though, because he gets to read Ram V's Justice League.
That's true.
And then Badger, poor Ram, on Twitter every single week.
He's like a stalker.
You get put on a list.
He's a stalker. Catwoman 29, which I'll, speaking of praising Ram V, we're looking forward to that. Superman Red and Blue issue 1 is out next week, if you're looking for that. Batman vs. Ra's al Ghul issue 5. How long has this 6-issue mini been going? I tried issue 1 of that like a year and a half ago.
Yeah. There was a Neil Adams Batman book my brother picked up when he was here, when we were at the comic book store, and I was like, just put that down, man. Don't. I'm sure it looks cool. Just get something else.
Truth and Justice issue 2, as well as Looney Tunes 259 to round out the week. So as far as stuff that obviously we're going to be looking at in the show, we're looking at Nightwing, we're looking at Justice League, we're looking at Catwoman, and I guess Superman Red and Blue, because it's not allowed next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be checking out Red and Blue 4.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wasn't. I didn't like that much of Black and White, Batman Black and White issue 1, but given there's only 3 other books next week, and even with a Patreon book, I'll probably still read Red and Blue.
Yeah, well,
it's quiet.
And these are all normal size. I mean, Justice League has a backup, but I don't think either Catwoman or Nightwing.
Yeah, Justice League has a backup. Superman Red and Blue, I think, is like a 50-page book or something like that. But
yeah. Well, it's $5. Wait, how much is it?
$6.
Where'd it go? It's $6. Yeah. So this one has a John Ridley with Clayton Henry.
Okay, that should be good.
Brandon Easton and Steve Lieber. And then Wes Craig, who did Deadly Class. And Margaret Bennett and Jill Thompson, and then Dan Waters and the artist Danny.
So we'll see. Mix of things.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, if things get really busy for some reason next week, it'll be an easy one to miss. But I mean, I'll read Red and Blue issue 1. I don't see why not. It's a quiet week. And then maybe do a Patreon book. I'm sure Connor will probably do it. Well, technically Connor's doing a Patreon book anyway because he's doing Justice League. But
Justice League 59.
Yeah, 59. It's not quite 69.
Kind of nice.
Kind of nice. It's 69. It's like 69, but someone's sitting in a chair. The 5 is someone sitting in a chair. It's a 69 at an angle.
Cool. Superior leg strength. All right, let's get out of here.
Oh, dude.
Before it gets weirder.
We were only just scratching the surface, Matt, and you know it. That's
why I gotta get hot and bothered in here.
I will remind everyone to go and vote on the best DC characters of all time for the special top 250 top 50 that we're going to have next month to celebrate our episode 250. So I'll thank our patrons right now of Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are Patreon producers for the month of March. Meaning they are $20 or more at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But you can, of course, support us for as little as $1 per month and help keep all the content coming, including the podcast, but also all the movie podcasts and TV podcast reviews that we do on MailFuzz TV. So go and check out those if you're into horror movies, for example. Go check out Screams After Midnight. If you're into science fiction movies, check out the Atomic Cinema Experiment that I do with Tim and Tara, respectively. But you can support us, of course, at Patreon. Worth mentioning, at the $5 tier, perhaps the most relevant one for the comic podcast fans, is you get the show a day early. Comics from the Multiverse, you get a day early. Previously in the Multiverse, which is the sister show that me and Connor do, working through classic DC runs, you get a whole month early now. And that seems to have settled into an every other week schedule. It was supposed to be every week, but Connor's work schedule's been all over the place, so it's been difficult to keep up with that. But so go check that out. Obviously, it's on the same feed if you're checking out the episodes. But so do that. Please do like, subscribe, comment. All those things are free, and they also support us in a big way too, because YouTube really cares about all those things. Rating the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from, give it the 5 stars and a review, also helpful. Share us on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. So please do that. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. That is it. So, but once again, vote the top 50 DC characters. You don't have to put a top 50. You only need to do a top 20, but you can do a full top 50 if you want. That's a choice you have.
Mm-hmm. And we all know who's not going to be in my top 5. So
Superman.
No, it's number 1, my friend. I was going to spoil that. Like, come on.
Connor Kent.
And I'm going to overinflate Guy Gardner so he gets a damn good showing.
No. There'll be no overinflation.
Yes.
Yes. So please do go and do all those things. Make sure you vote. Because we'll have a fun results show. We're going to record this top 50 results next month as an extra bonus. And I'll probably premiere it on the YouTube. So if people want to watch it together in the chat room as the results are being revealed, you can have fun doing that on the MailFuzz TV channel. Otherwise, it'll be on the audio feed, of course, after it's premiered, as it always would. So because of that, it probably won't be early on Patreon, that one particular episode, that extra episode. But people should have fun doing that. I will let you know when that's going to go up when the time comes. But you've got all the month to vote, so make sure you vote in March. So thank you once again. That has been us. That has been Comics from the Multiverse, episode 244. We always appreciate you joining us. So thank you once again for watching and listening. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.
Next week, Dick by Taylor.